ఆ బటన్ నొక్కితే కొంతమందికి పడటం, అర్హులైన వాళ్ళు చాలామందికి కూడా పడకపోవడం జరిగేది. మరి దాన్ని అధిగమిస్తూ ఈరోజు తల్లికి వందనం అనే కార్యక్రమంలో భాగంగా ఎంతమంది పిల్లలు ఉంటే అంతమంది పిల్లలకి కూడా ఈ తల్లికి వందనం గార్డియన్ ఖాతాల్లో జమ చేయడం జరిగింది. అయితే ఎక్కడైనా అర్హులకి పడకపోతే మళ్ళీ గ్రీవెన్స్ అనేది ఒకసారి కాదు రెండుసార్లు రేజ్ చేసి వాళ్ళకి ఆ తల్లికి వందనం పడేలాగా ఈ వెల్ఫేర్ అసిస్టెంట్లు అందరూ కూడా జాగ్రత్తలు తీసుకుంటూ ఉన్నారు. ముఖ్యంగా గత ప్రభుత్వంలో అయితే అర్హులకి పడకపోతే ఎక్కడ ఎన్ని ఆర్తనాదాలు చేసినా సరే మళ్ళీ ఇంప్లిమెంట్ అయ్యే పరిస్థితి, మళ్ళీ వాళ్ళ ఖాతాల్లో డబ్బులు పడే పరిస్థితి ఉండేది కాదు. మరి ఈ రోజున ఒకటి కాదు రెండు గ్రీవెన్స్ అయినా సరే అర్హులందరికీ కూడా పడాలి, ఎంతమంది పిల్లలు ఉంటే అంతమందికి పడాలని ఈ గ్రీవెన్స్ రేజ్ చేయటం అందరూ కూడా చాలా సంతోషంగా ఉన్నారు. అదేవిధంగా గత 5 ఏళ్ల పాలనలో ఎక్కడ రేషన్ కార్డులు కొత్తవి ఇవ్వడం జరగలేదు. అదేవిధంగా పెన్షన్లు కూడా కొత్తవి ఎక్కడా కూడా ఇవ్వడం జరగలేదు. ఎన్డీఏ కూటమి వచ్చిన తర్వాత రేషన్ కార్డులు కానీ కొత్త పెన్షన్లు కానీ కూడా ఇవ్వటం జరుగుతూ ఉంది. అలాగే పెట్టుబడులు వెల్లువలా వస్తూ ఉన్నాయి. ఈరోజు 20,000 కోట్ల పెట్టుబడులు ఐటీ శాఖ నుంచి తీసుకురావడం నారా లోకేష్ గారు సమర్థవంతంగా తీసుకురావడం జరిగింది. సుమారు 50,000 జాబులు కూడా ఇవ్వడం జరుగుతుంది. హై ప్రొఫైల్ ఉన్న వ్యక్తులందరికీ కూడా ఇందులో జాబులు రావటం, అదే ఎక్కువ శాలరీస్తో ఈ జాబులు రావడం జరుగుతుంది. అలాగే సుమారు 6 లక్షల కోట్లు పెట్టుబడులు ఈ యొక్క రాష్ట్రానికి రావడం జరిగింది. దాని నిమిత్తం సుమారు 10 లక్షల ఉద్యోగాలు భర్తీ చేయడానికి కూడా సర్వం సిద్ధంగా ఉన్నాయి. అయితే ఈ వైసీపీ వాళ్ళకి ఈ అభివృద్ధి సంక్షేమంతో పాటు ఈ పెట్టుబడులు రావటం మింగిడి పడిన వైనంగా తయారయ్యి ఈ రాష్ట్రంలో ఏదో జరగబోతుంది, ఫ్యాక్షనిజం తీసుకుని వస్తాం, రపరపా మా ప్రభుత్వం వస్తే నరికేస్తామని రకరకాల విన్యాసాలు చేస్తూ, అలాగే భాస్కర్ అనే వ్యక్తి చేత మెయిల్స్ ఇప్పిస్తూ ఇక్కడికి రావద్దు, పెట్టుబడులు పెట్టొద్దు అని చెప్పి మొత్తం మీద ఈ రాష్ట్రాన్ని మరో బీహార్ కింద తయారు చేద్దాం, ఇది అసమర్థ పాలన అని చెప్పి చూపిందామని చెప్పి ఓ విషం కోణంలో వాళ్ళ ప్రయత్నాలు వాళ్ళు చేస్తూ ఉన్నారు. అలాగే మీకు తెలుసు, ఈ నిన్న అమలాపురం సంఘటన 3 days బ్యాక్ జరుగుతున్నప్పుడు అందులో ఒక వ్యక్తి, మహేష్ అనే వ్యక్తి, అలాగే శంకర్ అనే వ్యక్తి ఉద్యోగాలు ఇప్పిస్తామని చెప్పి కొంతమంది బాధితుల దగ్గర డబ్బులు తీసుకున్న తర్వాత ఈ బాధితులు కొంతమంది మధ్యవర్తుల వద్దకు వెళ్ళి, విజయ్ అనే మధ్యవర్తి దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి ఇలా అతనికి డబ్బులు ఇచ్చామని చెప్పడం, ఈ విజయ్ అన్న అతని అనుచరులు ఈయన్ని కొట్టడం జరిగింది. ఈ మహేష్ అన్న అతన్ని, శంకర్ అన్న అతన్ని. అయితే ఇందులో వైసీపీ పేటీఎం బ్యాచ్ ఇన్వాల్వ్ అయ్యి మంత్రి గారి అనుచరులు ఇందులో కొట్టిన వాళ్ళు అని అభియోగం చేస్తూ ఉన్నారు. కొట్టిన వ్యక్తి ఎవరైనప్పటికీ చట్టం అతని చేతిలోకి తీసుకోవడం జరిగింది. అతను కొట్టే అర్హత అతనికి లేదు. అయితే కొట్టడం వల్ల అతను ఏ శిక్ష అయినా సరే వేయమని చెప్పడం జరిగింది. అతనికి అసలు బయటకు వదలవద్దు, అతని వెనకాల ఎవరైతే ఉన్నారో అందరినీ కూడా బయటికి లాగండి. ఇందులో అలాంటి వ్యక్తుల్ని మన సభ్య సమాజంలో వెంటనే వదిలేస్తే మళ్ళీ ఈ కులాంతరంగా గొడవలు జరుగుతాయని చెప్పడం జరిగింది. అయితే వైసీపీ బ్యాచ్ అంతా కూడా నా అనుచరులు అంటూ ఉన్నారు. నా అనుచరులు అవ్వడానికి నా కారులో తిరుగుతున్నారా, లేకపోతే నా దగ్గర ఉద్యోగాలు చేస్తున్నారా అని అడుగుతూ ఉన్నాను. వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా నా గ్రామం అయితే, నా గ్రామంలో ఉన్న వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా నా అనుచరులు అవ్వాలని లేదు. నాతో ఫోటోలు దిగుతారు, లేకపోతే నా గ్రామంలో నాతో పాటు ఒక గ్రామస్తుడు అవటం వల్ల అతను నా అనుచరులు అంటాం అవివేకం అని తెలియజేసుకుంటూ, అలాగే ఏదైతే ఎల్లమెల్లి విజయ్ అనే వ్యక్తి కొట్టాడో ఆ కొట్టిన వ్యక్తి కొడుకు మా కాలేజీలో చదువుతూ కొద్ది పోకిరీ వేషాలు వేస్తూ ఉంటే అతను సస్పెండ్ చేయడం కూడా జరిగింది. అయితే అక్కడ తప్పు జరిగితే ఉపేక్షించే పరిస్థితి లేదు అని అది క్లియర్ కట్గా మేము చెప్పదలిచాం. అదేవిధంగా ఇంక విషయానికి వస్తే ఏదైతే మహేష్ శంకరు ఉద్యోగాల పేరు నిమిత్తం డబ్బులు తీసుకున్నారో కొంతమంది దళిత యువతీ యువకులు కానీ మిగిలిన క్యాస్ట్ వాళ్ళు కానీ వాళ్ళ మీద అనేక స్టేషన్లో ఫిర్యాదు చేయడం జరిగింది. కేవలం 2 వ్యక్తులు మా దగ్గర డబ్బులు తీసుకున్నారని చెబుతూ వాళ్ళతో మాట్లాడిన ఆడియో రికార్డింగ్స్ కూడా బయటపెట్టడం జరిగింది. అయితే ఈ ఆడియో రికార్డింగ్స్ అన్నీ బయటకు వచ్చాయి. వీళ్ళు పదే పదే మమ్మల్ని మోసం చేసిన శంకరు అలాగే మహేష్ అని చెప్పి చెప్తా ఉన్నప్పటికీ ఈ వైసీపీ బ్యాచ్ నాకు చెందిన రాయల్ కాలేజ్ ఇన్వాల్వ్మెంట్ ఉందని రాస్తూ ఉన్నారు. అయితే ఇందులో రాయల్ కాలేజీలో చేస్తున్న ఒక స్టాఫ్ గుత్తులు విజయ్ కుమార్ అనే అతను లెక్చరర్. అతను ఈ మహేష్ అన్న అతనికి స్నేహితుడు అతను పిలిస్తే ఇతను వెళ్ళటం జరిగింది. గొడవ జరుగుతున్నప్పుడు అది ఆల్రెడీ స్టేట్మెంట్ ఇచ్చాడు. ఆల్రెడీ పోలీసు వాళ్ళు పూర్తి స్థాయిలో ఎంక్వైరీ చేశారు. ఏదైతే హాస్పిటల్లో ఉన్నాడో హాస్పిటల్లో ఉన్నప్పుడు విత్ వీడియో రికార్డింగ్ అన్ని స్టేట్మెంట్లు తీసుకోవడం జరిగింది. అయితే ఈ వైసీపీ పేటీఎం బ్యాచ్ నిరంతరం ఏదో ఆశిస్తూ ఉన్నారు. ఇక్కడ చూడవలసింది ఒకటే, మోసపోయిన వాళ్ళు, మోసం చేసిన వాడిని కొట్టిన వాళ్ళు దోషులుగా ఉన్నారు. ఈ రోజున ఖచ్చితంగా శిక్షించవలసిందే వాళ్ళు, ఎంతటోళ్ళైనా ఏదైనా సరే. అలాగే సంబంధం లేని వాళ్ళని దీంట్లో తీసుకుని వచ్చి ఏదో 4 పోస్టులు పెట్టి వైసీపీ అఫీషియల్ పేజీలో పెట్టేసినంత మాత్రాన అక్కడ ఇంటెలిజెన్స్ ఉంటుంది, చట్టం దాని పని అది చేసుకుపోతుంది. అలా చట్టాన్ని చేతిలో తీసుకున్న వాళ్ళని ఉపేక్షించమని అన్నం తింటున్న వాళ్ళు ఎవరూ కూడా అనరు. అలాగే నా కాలేజీకి కానీ నాకు కానీ 1% ప్రమేయం కూడా లేదని తెలియజేసుకుంటూ, ఏదైతే ఈ వైసీపీ పేటీఎం బ్యాచ్ ఉందో వాళ్ళు ఓరలేనితనం, ఈ సంక్షేమం అభివృద్ధి అనేది చూడలేకపోతూ ఉన్నారు. అదేవిధంగా రపరప నరికేస్తానని ఒకళ్ళు అంటుంటే చీకట్లో నరికేయమని ఇంకొకళ్ళు అంటూ ఉన్నారు. వీళ్ళకి బహుశా గత 5 సంవత్సరాల్లో తాగిన మద్యం వికటించి మానసికంగా ఇబ్బంది పడుతున్నారని నాకు భావం కలుగుతూ ఉంది. ఏదేమన్నప్పటికీ ఈ 3-4 రోజులు అవసరం లేని అన్ని ట్రోల్ చేసి ఏదో సాధిందాం అనుకున్న వైసీపీ పేటీఎం బ్యాచ్కి ఒకటే చెప్తా ఉన్నా, మీరేమన్నా గత ప్రభుత్వంలో దాచుకున్న మీ జగనన్న ముందు ఉంటే ఈరోజు తాగి ఫుల్గా పడుకుని పొద్దున్నే మళ్ళీ పిచ్చివాగడు వాగాలని కోరుకుంటూ, ఏదేమన్నప్పటికీ ఈ ప్రభుత్వం సంక్షేమం అభివృద్ధి అనేది సమపాళ్ళుగా తీసుకెళ్తూ, అలాగే ప్రతి ఇంటికో పారిశ్రామికవేత్త రావాలి అనే ఆకాంక్షతో ఎంఎస్ఎంఈ కార్యక్రమాలని చాలా ఫోర్స్ఫుల్గా అందరినీ ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేయండి. మీరు 5 లక్షల లోన్ ఏమైనా ఇస్తుంటే వాటిని కేవలం చిన్న సూక్ష్మ తరగతి పరిశ్రమలు పెట్టుకోండి తప్ప దాన్ని డైవర్ట్ చేయొద్దని చెప్పడం జరుగుతూ ఉంది. అలాగే P4 అనే కార్యక్రమం నిమిత్తం కూడా పేదలు ఎవరైతే ఉన్నారో వాళ్ళని చూసి ఇటు అందరినీ కోఆర్డినేషన్ చేసుకుని ఈ బంగారు కుటుంబాలని ఎన్నుకుని వాళ్ళకి గట్టిన్ అవడానికి, జీవితంలో వాళ్ళు సామాన్య బతుకు బ్రతకడానికి, వాళ్ళు 5 ఏళ్ళు నోట్లోకి వెళ్ళటానికి మొత్తం స్టేట్ వైడ్ అంతా కూడా ప్రక్షాళన జరుగుతూ ఉంది. ఏదేమన్నప్పటికీ ఈ ప్రభుత్వం మంచి ప్రభుత్వాన్ని సుపరిపాలనలో తొలి అడుగు ఏదో ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేశారు వైసీపీ వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా, అలరలు జరుగుతాయి, ప్రజలు తిరగబడతారని ప్రజలందరూ కూడా స్వాగతిస్తూ ఉన్నారు. అలాగే సమస్యలు ఉంటాయి, సమస్యలు లేకుండా ఎక్కడా ఉండవు. మాకు వెంటనే రోడ్లు కావాలి, ట్రైన్లు కావాలని ప్రజలు అడుగుతూ ఉన్నారు. ఇంకా మన పాలన 4 సంవత్సరాలు ఉంది, 1 by 1 చేసుకుని వస్తామని వాళ్ళకి సమాధానం చెప్తూ వెళ్తున్నాం. అన్నీ కూడా 1 by 1 ఏదైతే డ్రైన్లు ఉన్నాయో, రోడ్లు ఉన్నాయో, ఇప్పుడు మెయిన్ రోడ్లు మీరు చూశారు, ఈ ప్రభుత్వం రాగానే 1200 కోట్లతో గుంతల రహిత రోడ్డు అనేది నిర్మించడం జరిగింది. ఎక్కడా కూడా అలసత్వం అనేది లేకుండా చంద్రబాబు నాయుడు గారు ఆయన పడుకోవట్లేదు, మమ్మల్ని పడుకోనివ్వట్లేదు. అధికారులను కూడా ఎక్కడైనా సరే చిన్న అశ్రద్ధ వహిస్తుంటే ఊరుకునే ఊరుకుని చూసి చూడనట్టు వ్యవహరించే ప్రభుత్వం ఇది కాదని తెలియజేసుకుంటూ అందరికీ నమస్కారం. అనుచరులు అంటే దాని అర్థం ఏంటో నాకు తెలియట్లేదండి. ఎందుకంటే నాతో పాటు ఒక గ్రామంలో పుట్టిన వ్యక్తి ఆయన నా అనుచరుడు అంటే నాకు కూడా తిరుగుతూ ఉండాలి. ఎలక్షన్లో తిరిగి ఉండొచ్చు, లేకపోతే ఈ మధ్యకాలంలో నా కారులో తిరుగుతున్న నా వెంట ఉన్న అతను అనుచరుడు అవుతాడు. అయితే ఒక గ్రామంలో పుట్టాడు కదా అని చెప్పి నా అనుచరుడు అంటే ఎలా? ఈ మధ్యకాలంలో ఈ సంవత్సరంలో 2 నెలలు ఏ రోజైనా నా కారు ఎక్కాడా, లేకపోతే నా దగ్గర ఉద్యోగం చేస్తున్నాడా? అలాగే నేను చెప్తాను, అతనే అనుచరుడు అయితే వాళ్ళ అబ్బాయి మా కాలేజ్ చదువుతూ ఉన్నాడు, చదువుతుంటే కొద్ది పోకిరి వేషాలు వేస్తున్నాడని అతను టీసీ కూడా ఇచ్చి పంపించడం జరిగింది.
हर महीने सिर्फ 15,000 रुपए से स्टार्ट करें और 3 करोड़ देकर अपने बच्चे का फ्यूचर सिक्योर करें. यस, विद एक्सिस मैक्स लाइफ कैपिटल गारंटी सॉल्यूशन, एक्सिस मैक्स लाइफ स्मार्ट इनोवेशन फंड के साथ इसमें लाइफ कवर तो है ही, और अगर आपने इसमें 15,000 रुपए का मंथली प्रीमियम शुरू किया होता फॉर 10 ईयर्स, यानी टोटल प्रीमियम पेड रुपीज 18 लाख, तो आपको इन 2025 में लगभग 3.7 करोड़ रुपए जो प्रीमियम पे किए हैं वो भी गारंटीड मिलते हैं और मार्केट का अपसाइड भी मिलता. लेकिन अगर इसी बीच आपको कुछ हो जाए तो कंपनी बचे हुए प्रीमियम भी फंड करेगी ताकि आपका मैच्योरिटी अमाउंट सिक्योर रहे, और तो और फैमिली को मंथली इनकम बेनिफिट भी मिलेगा. इस 4-in-1 बेनिफिट के साथ आपका इंश्योरेंस इन्वेस्टमेंट भी ग्रो करेगा बच्चों के सपनों की तरह. क्लिक ऑन द लिंक बिलो टू बाय नाउ.
And to negotiate, you have to really out-prepare and out-think your competitors. Take an interest in the world because we do live in globalized times. Whether we like it or not, the world has come into our homes. Scale of change, the intensity of change, the impact of it on our lives is going to be profoundly different from anything that we know, possibly anything that we can even imagine. Not everybody is brilliant at everything every day. And I must say it's wonderful to be back in the school where I pretty much did most of my education. Now we are marking 70 years of TAPS. By a coincidence, I also happen to be 70 years. So when I look at the school's history, it was I'm not entirely sure whether I came back after picking up my school certificate when I passed out. But I do want to say when I came back to the building, I knew exactly where my classrooms were. It was really with a great deal of sentiment and an enormous sense of nostalgia that I stand here before you. Now, on these occasions, it's very common to talk about the lessons you learnt in school. Actually, to be honest, there's also a sense of lessons you wished you learnt, but you didn't. In my case, I think for a person who spent so much time in a world of cultures and language, maybe I should have paid more attention to my Sanskrit classes. But nobody is perfect. So I do want really to all of you, and particularly to the students, to the parents, to all those who are here, but also those who will be connected, who will be watching this event. Perhaps share a few key thoughts of what the school means really with the passage of time, when you look back at that schooling period. So here are my 4 key messages. And the first message is that everything they told you to do in school is good and is true. You wish that the preparation, the discipline, the teamwork, the skills, the confidence, even the personal turnout, what was instilled in all of us when we were in this school has stood us in good stead through our life. And what they actually become with the passage of time, to a great deal, they become habits. Habits, to some extent, they become an approach, an attitude, a mindset. And I would say, when I look back at, how I have navigated through life, a lot of these qualities, as you know, I've spent most of my life in the world of diplomacy. And in diplomacy, you are negotiating all the time. And to negotiate, you have to really out-prepare and out-think your competitors. And you can only out-prepare and out-think them if you carry those virtues which teachers tried to instill in us, which is do your homework, figure it out, prepare, try to anticipate what is coming. And those qualities, those habits, as I said, really have stood me in very good stead all these years. But there is another side to life, which is in real life. None of us are alone, however brilliant one may or may not be. And, a large part of my life, and I'm very conscious that I'm here amidst Air Force people in an Air Force institutions, a large part of it is actually what would be considered operations of some kind. Today, it has caught the attention of the Indian public because often our citizens are in difficulties abroad. So, in our own lexicon in the MEA today, we also have, we have Operation Ganga, where we went into Ukraine. Perhaps that's the most famous one, but whether it was Afghanistan, whether it was Nepal, whether it was, what we did in Yemen. I mention this to you because there was a second, I would say, set of qualities one learnt in school, which is teamwork. The ability to get along with other people, the ability to spot, in your own peer group and with others, you spot people's strengths and then try to meld it into something which is to a collective benefit. And the third, of course, is organization. And all of us in life, and I say this to all the students particularly, we all contribute to an organization. We all contribute to a collective. Some of us over a passage of time might be leaders of that collective, but we are still all very much part of that collective. And what this school teaches you at the end of the day, what it certainly taught me, was how to prepare, how to be part of a team, and really how to contribute to an organization, and with the passage of time, develop the maturity and the confidence and the capability to lead an organization. So my first message again, take school seriously. Listen to the teachers. They actually are trying to din something good into us. And the more we absorb it, the better for us. Now there's a second message. And that, in a way, I give today both as a minister, a foreign minister, as well as a person from the world of diplomacy, which is take an interest in the world. Take an interest in the world because we do live in globalized times. Whether we like it or not, the world has come into our homes. The world shapes everything we do. There was that famous film, I've referred to it in one of my books as well, called Shatranj Ke Khiladi, where two Nawabs are playing chess while the East India Company is busy rolling up this country. And they don't understand what is going on around them. Now, if we are to prosper as a country, if we are to go up as a society, if we are to aspire to the goals of Viksit Bharat, it is important we recognize the reality of the globalized world and how profoundly it impacts us. Now, we saw that during COVID, that something which started in some other country actually came and completely took over our lives for a few years. We see that in faraway conflicts. A war may be going on somewhere else, but its impact actually affects our daily lives. Had we not handled some of the challenges, for example, the cost of living for every citizen of this country would have gone up in the last 3 or 4 years. So this world, the world which awaits the students of the school today, is a radically different world. It will be a world of AI. It will be a world of tech. It will be a world of drones. It will be a world of space. It will be a world of electric mobility, of green hydrogen. It will be dramatically different from everything we know. I know that every generation says that, but this time, believe me, it is the scale of change, the intensity of change, the impact of it on our lives is going to be profoundly different from anything that we know, possibly anything that we can even imagine. So, my advice here is, as you go through school, develop an interest in the world. And an interest in the world doesn't need to be taught formally in school. We got interested in the world through music, through books, through movies. There wasn't the smartphone and the internet those days, but today the ability to connect to the world is so much more that it is something the generations which will come, I think they will really define the country by their ability to globalize, by their ability to actually fully take advantage of the opportunities the world has to offer and meet the challenges also that the world presents. The third message I have is really enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself to discover yourself. Because the truth is, when we are in school, at least when I was in school, all of us, we don't necessarily have a good sense of our aptitude. We don't always know what we want to do. There's nothing, that's quite normal. And what school does in a way is it broadens us out, it expands our knowledge. There's a lot of learning we pick up in school outside class as well. And that, I think, when we come out of school, that broader perspective that we have picked up in the classroom, we have picked up outside the classroom. And again, some of it is knowledge, but some of it are also other habits. We are today very ardent propagators of Fit India and Khelo India. These are also habits you pick up in school. And I can tell you, if there is one important lifestyle advice I would give you, stay fit. That fitness is not just it's not just a bodily condition. Your work performance, your alertness, even your happiness, in a way, comes out of fitness. I say this to you as perhaps among, I would say, the most experienced person in the room, but if you can stay fit, if you can play sports, if you can keep your competitive instincts going, there is a lot of good, lot of gain that comes from it. If Today, in my routine, I can get off a plane and get to work and carry on with a 14-hour day. A large part of it is because I make an effort to be physically fit. And particularly if you play some kind of competitive sports, I don't recommend it to everybody, but there's really nothing like a good game of squash to start your day. So I would say that sense of enjoy the school, pick up all the possibilities they are, and discover yourself through that. That is something which certainly is an advice. And my fourth advice, I very much admire the people, it was a great honor to be invited to give the trophies and the recognition for the really brilliant students of the school. And in every peer group, you admire people who do well. They set standards, they inspire others. You learn so much from them. But I also want to make a contrary point. I was presented with a photograph of my passing out. This was the passing out picture. I was in the last row, okay, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. So I want to tell you all, there's also a view from the last row that, not everybody is brilliant at everything every day. And they don't need to have an issue with that. That, again, as I said, this process of learning, of discovering yourself, it will come with the passage of time. It may not come entirely in school, but school is the foundation on which it is built. But through the journey of life, we do discover our strengths. We do, I would say, those of us who can follow our passion and make a passion into a profession are very fortunate, because then we intuitively, we very naturally excel at what we do. But the message which I do want to leave to all students of the school is, these are your foundational years. These are years you don't have to be absolutely certain what you are going to do in life. You are going to go through this passage, picking up things, sometimes absorbing it through osmosis without knowing even what it is you are learning. But you absorb it, you learn from it, you remember it, and it's certainly, this is really the foundation on which you as a person are built. So I say this really not as a formality, not as a platitude. All of us perhaps owe the school more than we owe any other institution or any other body in our life, other than maybe our immediate family, sometimes maybe more than our immediate family. That what we are, as I said, without sometimes even that self-awareness, is because of the habits, because of the atmosphere, the ethos of the school. It is what we pick up here. It is these formative experiences which make us what we are. And I'm really today delighted to see so many of you. I've always had the belief that this school particularly was always a very tight fraternity. I can see that before my very eyes. Once again, I want to say it, for me, a great privilege, a great honor to come back to the school, to indulge in that nostalgia, to have you all here listen to me. Once again, I wish the school, I wish the students, I wish the teachers, the alumni, all the very best. सबसे पहले तो मैं संकल्प फाउंडेशन का आभार प्रकट करना चाहूँगा कि आज उन्होंने मुझे ये अवसर दिया कि जो लोग यूपीएससी एग्ज़ाम को जिन्होंने अभी पास किया है, अपने जीवन के एक नए चरण का प्रारंभ जिनका हो रहा है, उनसे मिलना, उनको संबोधित करना, उनका स्वागत करना सरकार में, इसका एक अवसर दिया है। जिन्होंने ये एग्ज़ाम जिन्होंने सफलता पाई है, मैं उनको और उनके परिवारों को मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। और मैंने जानबूझ के परिवार को मेंशन किया है, आप समझेंगे क्यों। अभी कार्यक्रम में हम लोगों ने 3 हमारे वरिष्ठ साथी जो हैं उनको सम्मानित किया था, और मुझे ये खुशी की बात है कि एक पीके बासु जी जो हैं मेरे ब्रदर के बैचमेट हैं सर्विस में, रश्मि कपूर जी खुद मेरे बैचमेट हैं, और ओम अग्रवाल जी को भी मैं अपनी हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ। अब ये यूपीएससी का एग्ज़ाम जो है, मैं देखिए पिछले, अब मुझे क्या 48 साल हो गए जब से मैंने एग्ज़ाम पास किया, विदेश सेवा में भर्ती की, और दुनिया में करीब 200 देश, मैं करीब 120-130 में अभी तक जा चुका हूँ। यूपीएससी यूनिक, यूपीएससी जैसा कहीं भी किसी भी देश में ऐसा एंट्रेंस एग्ज़ाम गवर्नमेंट सर्विस के लिए नहीं। और मैं इस बात पे इसीलिए बल दे रहा हूँ कि जिन्होंने आज सफलता पाई है, हो सकता है कि उनके मन में हो कि भाई चलिए एग्ज़ाम पास कर दिया, आपने एक बहुत बड़ी जो सफलता जो आपको मिली है, और जो जिम्मेदारी इस सफलता के साथ आती है, ये भी एक, मैं कहूँगा, बहुत यूनिक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, और आपको इस समय करियर के शुरुआत में ये समझना चाहिए। अब यूपीएससी एक किस्म से एक अग्नि परीक्षा है कि जितनी मेहनत होती है, आप देखिए, आपने कम से कम साल तो गुजारा होगा। जिनका पहला प्रयास नहीं था, उन्होंने साल से ज़्यादा भी किया होगा। और इसकी जो प्रिपरेशन जो है, जितना टाइम लगता है, जो स्केल जो है, कितने लोग जो हैं इस एग्ज़ाम के लिए अपियर होते हैं, और जो आपकी ओर से जो एफर्ट जो है, और उसके साथ जो टेंशन जो होता है, ये मैं सचमुच आपको कह सकता हूँ कि दुनिया में ये एक बहुत अनोखा, बहुत ही स्पेशल एक्सपीरियंस। अब ऐसे एक्सपीरियंस के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? एक तो वो सपोर्ट चाहिए। इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि आज जो बधाई मैं देता हूँ, मैं फैमिली को भी देता हूँ, क्योंकि जो आप लोग बैठे हैं, आपकी सफलता जो है, इसके हकदार आपकी फैमिली भी है, ये कभी नहीं भूलिएगा। इसके लिए आत्मविश्वास भी चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर आप सोचेंगे, कभी ना कभी कोई ये समय ज़रूर हुआ होगा आपके पिछले साल में, 2 साल में, कहीं कुछ शंकाएं, कुछ दुविधाएं, कुछ डाउट कि भाई हो सकता, नहीं हो सकता, पेपर कठिन है, नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं तो आपके मन में ऐसी डाउट्स तो होती होंगी। और नॉर्मली क्या करते हैं लोग, वो अपने सर्कल में इसकी बात चर्चा करते हैं, अपने दोस्तों के पास जाते हैं, अपने टीचर्स के पास जाते हैं। पर ये क्योंकि चुनौती जो है इतनी बड़ी है, और आपके यहाँ से अपने एक किस्म से पूरा इतना प्रयास, आपके जीवन का 1 या 2 या 3 साल आपने इसको डेडिकेट किया, आपको इसके अलावा जो है, अपने फैमिली के अलावा, अपने फ्रेंड्स के अलावा, आपको एक सपोर्ट सिस्टम चाहिए, आपको गाइडेंस चाहिए। और ये गाइडेंस और ये सपोर्ट सिस्टम आपको संकल्प फाउंडेशन देती। तो इसीलिए आज जब मैं बैठ के मैं देख रहा था कि ऑल इंडिया रैंकिंग लिस्ट में कितने लोग जो हैं संकल्प के सपोर्ट से, संकल्प के माध्यम से सफल रहे हैं, मैं आज संकल्प फाउंडेशन को भी मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ कि ये आपका योगदान है क्योंकि गुड गवर्नेंस की हम बात करते हैं। गुड गवर्नेंस के अलग अलग पहल होते हैं, इसमें गुड पीपल टू बी पार्ट ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। एंड इसमें आप लोगों का जो योगदान जो है उसकी मैं सराहना करता हूं, उसकी मैं प्रशंसा करता हूं। अब जब मैं अपनी जो उस समय की बात जो मेरा जो अनुभव था, उस समय संकल्प फाउंडेशन नहीं था, बहुत कम ऐसे कोचिंग सर्कल्स भी थे और ज़्यादातर जो है हमें सपोर्ट जो है हमारे अगल बगल में जो भी साथ थे, जो अगर हॉस्टल में थे, मैं हॉस्टल में था, JNU हॉस्टल में था उस समय, जो हॉस्टल वाले बाकी स्टूडेंट्स थे या टीचर्स थे या दोस्त थे, थोड़ी बहुत फैमिली भी थी। अब मेरा सौभाग्य था कि 1 साल पहले मेरे बड़े भाई जो हैं PK बसु के दोस्त हैं, उन्होंने परीक्षा वो सफल हुए, वो IAS में उनकी रैंकिंग जो थी कि वो IAS में आए। और मुझे अभी भी याद है, मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ कि मेरे सब्जेक्ट सिलेक्शन में उन्होंने मुझे प्रोत्साहित किया, क्योंकि मेरे मन में उस समय थोड़ी सी वो डाउट थी कि एग्ज़ाम लें ना लेंगे, अगर नहीं सफल होंगे तो क्या होगा, उसमें क्या चॉइस लें। एग्ज़ाम सिस्टम उस समय कुछ और था, ये प्रीलिम्स और मेन नहीं थे, एक ही एग्ज़ाम था। और मैंने जो है इतनी सहायता ली कि मेरे पेपर सिलेक्शन जो है कुछ ऐसे सिलेक्शन किए जो मेरे भाई के नोट्स का मैं उपयोग कर सकता हूँ। तो अगर उसके बाद अगले साल मैं वहाँ एग्ज़ाम में मुझे सफलता मिली, एक किस्म से उसकी क्रेडिट जो है मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ, कुछ तो क्रेडिट उनको भी मैं देता हूँ। अब एग्ज़ाम के बाद आप सब जानते हैं कि उसके बाद असली चुनौती इंटरव्यू में आती है, और इंटरव्यू में जोक्स बताना थोड़ा ख़तरनाक ही होता है। तो उनका मैं मानता हूं कि वो उनकी किस्मत थी कि फॉरेन सर्विस वाले, क्योंकि हमको सुनने की आदत है, तो उनको अच्छा हुआ कि फॉरेन सर्विस के कोई चेयरमैन मिल गए, कम से कम जोक तो उन्होंने सुना और उसकी प्रशंसा भी की। पर देखिए इंटरव्यू जो है, और अब इंटरव्यू आप लोगों का हो चुका है, तो आप भी एक किस्म से उस पर सोच सकते हैं और पुनर्विचार भी कर सकते हैं कि इंटरव्यू इज नॉट अ फंक्शन ऑफ नॉलेज। यू कैन बी अ वेरी स्मार्ट पर्सन, वेरी नॉलेजेबल, यू कैन नो योर सब्जेक्ट वेरी वेल, बट इंटरव्यू में दैट 1, 2, 3 सेंटेंसेस पूरा गड़बड़ कर सकते हैं। इंटरव्यू इज अबाउट कम्युनिकेशन, इट इज अबाउट थिंकिंग एट दैट टाइम अंडर प्रेशर, दैट यू नो दिस 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it can make or unmake your life. So, अब जो हो गया उसके बाद बहुत आसान लगता है, but if you imagine that period before you are going in for interview, कितना टेंशन था ना टेंशन, and once you come out, आपको उस समय भी पता नहीं कि भाई मैंने किया कैसे। So first you tell people, जो भी मिला कि भाई ये पूछा, मैंने ये जवाब दिया, पता नहीं मैंने ठीक दिया नहीं दिया। So I am saying this because communication skill today, and communication skill, how do you behave under pressure, this is something which is very important, not only for an interview. It is also important in life, it is important in your work, because you will have responsibility. Up during responsibility you will have pressure. How do you perform under pressure? That is something which is, and it, you know, you are all in your 20s. अब आपका experience भी limited है, so with the passage of time, with experience we handle it better. But how you have handled it, how you have done the interview, I think that is something which is really something you should value, something you should reflect on, something you should build upon. अब मैं अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा अनुभव शेयर करता हूँ. मेरा इंटरव्यू जो था वो 21 मार्च 1977 को था. कृष्ण गोपाल जी इस पे जानते होंगे. 21 मार्च 1977. That was the day emergency was revoked. So I go in for interview, Shahjahan Road, first person that morning. And that morning from previous day, the election result is coming. We were up all night watching the election result. सोए नहीं थे. It was showing on our face. And imagine I'm the first person as the defeat of the emergency rule is coming into the understanding of people. You walk into your interview. In a way, that is what got me through the interview. I was a political science student. So my interview, the first question they asked me, अच्छा आप political science पढ़ते हैं, so please explain to us, ये election में हुआ क्या? Now, I had two takeaways from that experience. One, very senior people, many of them former government servants, senior government servants, कुछ लोग जो हैं secretary रह चुके हैं, important people of political standing, people from different services, intellectuals. They are asking a 22-year-old student, कि भाई समझाओ हमें कि हुआ क्या इस election. Now, that is where I was lucky. It was a subject, because every Indian is interested in politics. If you are in JNU, you are super interested in politics. On top of it, I was a political science student. And we had all taken part in the 77 election campaign. We had all actually gone there and worked for the defeat of emergency in 77. So I forgot I was in the interview. I started giving them gyan, though I was 22. Okay. But my two takeaways. One, at that moment my communication skill somehow came together. I was able, because these were all people in a way who were connected, who were quite sympathetic to the government of the day at that time. To explain to the people who are sympathetic to the government of the day, भाई आप लोगों को हुआ क्या, without offending them, was actually quite a challenge. And the second thing which I learned that day, that ये Lutyens bubble जो है ना, these people were really shocked. They could not believe that this election result had happened, whereas for us as ordinary students, we could see that there was a wave against emergency. So from that day, I had two carry-aways from my interview. How to communicate under pressure and do it without offending people. How do you persuade? How do you explain? This was one carry-away, and the second, which was for me a political carry-away, that important people may be living in a bubble and not realizing actually what is happening in the country. And people on the field, because we thought of ourselves, we were students who had done campaigns. We had gone, I remember at that time going with my friends, we went to Bhiwani, we went to Muzaffarnagar, how we had picked up the sense on the ground. But people who sitting in Delhi with all the information from all the systems, somehow they missed it. So with that memory, let me come back to all of you. You are today roughly, I would say about 25, 26 in age. When independent India turns 100, you will be 47, 48. So this era, this 20 years, जो हम कहते हैं अमृत काल है, विकसित भारत की तरफ हमें जाना है. This is your era. It is your era because you will have to work, you will have to deliver, and you will be the beneficiaries of this era. You will be the leaders of this era. We say today that, India will become by 2047. Definitely we know for sure by 2030 we will be the third largest economy. By 2047 we will be closing the gap between 3 and 2. So I want you to think not just a sense कि भाई एग्जाम पास कर लिया, सर्विस में आ गए, feeling very happy, which you should, but I want you to think 20 years ahead. I want you to think that अगले 20 साल में जब हम विकसित भारत की दिशा में जाएंगे, आपका इसमें क्या योगदान होगा, और what is also the mindset you have to bring for Viksit Bharat to be successful. And I want to put some thoughts before you. One, I heard some young colleagues say that we are very happy that today हमें सर्विस करने का एक अवसर मिला है. Serving your nation. Serving your nation is, there can be nothing of greater pride than serving your nation. But do remember, at the end of the day, we are all a service. All of you who have entered, your Indian administrative service, your Indian foreign service, your Indian railway service, your Indian police service, your Indian revenue service. Important word, service. And something very interesting is happening in the world of service. There was a time कि जो सरकार कहती थी, जो देती थी, लोग मानते थे उसको. ये ज़माना अब बदल गया. अब अगर आप पब्लिक में देखें, वहाँ एक जागरूकता है, वहाँ एक सेल्फ अवेयरनेस है, लोग अपना हक पहचानते हैं. Expectations of the public have gone up. Expectation of service given by government has gone up. और खुद मैं अपने अनुभव से आपको बता सकता हूँ, आप में से ज़्यादातर लोगों के पास पासपोर्ट तो होगा ना. अब एक समय था, पासपोर्ट मिलने के लिए लोगों को 1, 2, 3 साल लगते थे. ये खाली समय का विषय नहीं था. अगर आपको कहीं जान पहचान नहीं थी तो आपका पासपोर्ट एप्लीकेशन कोई देखता ही नहीं था. जब 77 में मैंने फॉरेन सर्विस एंटर किया तो हमारे कॉलोनी में जो रहते थे उनको लगा कि भाई हम किसी को जानते हैं जो हमें कम से कम पासपोर्ट दिला सकते हैं. तो ये महत्व था उनके मन में. अब आप देखिए पासपोर्ट के बारे में क्या हुआ है. आज आप पासपोर्ट के लिए अप्लाई करते हैं, आपका पासपोर्ट, और खासकर जहां आप अपना बेसिक डॉक्यूमेंटेशन देते हैं, आधार देते हैं, पैन कार्ड देते हैं, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस देते हैं, आपका पासपोर्ट जो है कुछ दिनों में, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 1-2 हफ्ते, महीने के अंदर आपका पासपोर्ट आ जाता है. बट ये नहीं है कि लोग कहते हैं अच्छा भाई पहले साल लगते थे, अब कुछ हफ्ते लगते हैं, तो चलिए बड़े खुश. नहीं, पब्लिक की प्रेशर है कि हमें तो अब आदत हो गई है कि 4 हफ्ते 6 हफ्ते में मिलते हैं, पर वहाँ डिले हो गया, तो आप कुछ करिए इसका, या इतने डॉक्यूमेंट आप क्यों पूछते हैं, इसको कम करिए. तो पब्लिक इज कॉन्स्टेंटली प्रेशराइजिंग, इम्प्रूव सर्विस. हमें कभी जो सरकार में है, हमें कभी ये नहीं मानना चाहिए कि हम एक लेवल के पहुँचे हैं और उसके कारण अब लोग संतुष्ट हैं, और उनको संतुष्ट होना भी नहीं चाहिए. जब तक पब्लिक प्रेशर जो है, पब्लिक प्रेशर इज अ वे ऑफ इम्प्रूविंग परफॉर्मेंस. इट इज ओनली बाय इम्प्रूविंग परफॉर्मेंस कंट्री विल ग्रो. सो टुडे व्हेन वी से वी सर्व द नेशन, सर्विंग द नेशन इज ऑल्सो अ मैटर ऑफ प्राइड, बट इट इज ऑल्सो समथिंग विच वी शुड सेट कि हमें अपना परफॉर्मेंस, how does every generation improve on the performance of the previous generation. Second aspect is transforming the nation. जो परिवर्तन हमें रोज दिखाई दे रहा है, और ये परिवर्तन जो है, क्योंकि हम इस परिवर्तन के बीच में हैं, कभी कभी इसका महत्व हम खुद नहीं जानते। जब हम बाहर जाते हैं, देश के बाहर जाते हैं, और लोग हमसे पूछते हैं कि भारत में हो क्या रहा है, और अगर हम विकासशील देश जाएं, ज़्यादातर उनकी चुनौतियां जो हैं हमारी, जैसे अब मैं इजिप्ट गया, उनके यहाँ पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम है अनाज का, फूड का, उनके यहाँ गेहूँ खाते हैं, और जहाँ पीडीएस है उनके यहाँ दिक्कत है कि लीकेज का विषय, या कहीं आप और जाएं जहाँ पब्लिक हेल्थ वैक्सीनेशन का हो, या कोविड के समय में ये कोविड वैक्सीनेशन कैसे करें। तो आज जो है हमारे यहाँ अगर आप देखेंगे, पोषण से लेकर पेंशन तक, जब हम आवास योजना की बात करते हैं, घर देना, जहाँ प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना की बात करते हैं, कि आज जो है देश में 60% लोग जो हैं उनको डायरेक्ट न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट मिलता है। हम जब कहते हैं कि हमने आवास योजना के तहत 4 करोड़ घर दिए हैं, उसका मतलब है कि हमने पूरे जापान की आबादी को जो है कवर किया है पिछले दशक। अगर आप अन्न योजना के आंकड़े देखें, पूरा यूरोप और अमेरिका की जो आबादी जो है, उससे ज़्यादा लोग जो हैं हर महीने उनको न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट मिलती। अब कुछ भी आप मुद्रा प्रोग्राम देखें, कुछ भी हमारे योजना देखें, कुछ भी हमारे कार्यक्रम देखें, जिस स्केल में आज जो परिवर्तन हो रहा है, और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की भी बात करें कि मैं कभी कभी मुझे 5 मिनट मिलता है कहीं किसी को कुछ कहने में कि ताकि मैं इनको इम्प्रेस करूं। मुझे एक बार जर्मनी जाना पड़ा, उन्होंने कहा कि समय की सीमा है, आप आपका पूरा स्पीच जो है 5 मिनट के अंदर दीजिए। तो मैंने उनको शुरू ऐसे किया कि आज का भारत जो है हर साल 7 नए एयरपोर्ट बनाता है। आज का भारत जो है हर साल 1 या 2 नए मेट्रो सिस्टम खोलता है। आज का भारत जो है हर रोज 12 किलोमीटर रेलवे ट्रैक लगाता है, हर रोज 28 किलोमीटर हाईवे बनाता है। तो जब आप ये परिवर्तन, ये आंकड़े देते हैं, और हम इस परिवर्तन के बीच में हमारी ज़िंदगी कट रही, तो हमें जो है इसके बारे में माने उत्साह भी होना चाहिए, गर्व भी होना चाहिए, जागरूकता भी होनी चाहिए कि हम इसको कैसे आगे ले जाएं, और आपकी पीढ़ी जो है ये इसको अगले लेवल तक ले जाएगी। फिर विषय आती है नेशनल सिक्योरिटी, राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा की। और एक समय था जब हम सुरक्षा की बात करते थे कि लोगों के मन में था सुरक्षा जो है या तो ये फौज का काम है या पुलिस वालों का काम है। आज की परिभाषा कुछ और है। हम बात करते हैं कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव नेशनल पावर, माने जब हमारी टेक्नोलॉजी हो, हमारी इकोनॉमी हो, हमारी क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, ये सब आज हर चीज़ जो है सुरक्षा के साथ जुड़ी हुई। और जब तक ऑलराउंड डेवलपमेंट नहीं होता, भारत सुरक्षित नहीं होगा। गुड गवर्नेंस भी सुरक्षा के साथ जुड़ी हुई। तो आप जो है, आपकी जिम्मेदारी जो है सर्विस की है, परिवर्तन की है, सुरक्षा की है। और अगर आपका सौभाग्य हो कि आपको ऐसा अवसर आएगा कुछ मंच में या कुछ ऐसे घटनाओं में जहां आप भारत के प्रतिनिधि हो सकते हैं, और ये मैं आपको कह सकता हूं कि उससे कोई बड़ी बात, माने जो भी आप कहें, रिप्रेजेंटिंग इंडिया अब्रॉड, रिप्रेजेंटिंग इंडिया बिफोर द वर्ल्ड इज द ग्रेटेस्ट privilege, greatest honor that any Indian can have. So, let me put 2 other points before you. आई हैव सेड अच्छा अगले 20 साल में ये होगा, इसके लिए आप तैयारी करिए, आपकी ये मानसिकता होनी चाहिए, आपका ये संकल्प होना चाहिए। अब ये 20 साल में होगा क्या? जैसे मैंने कहा कि 2030 तक मुझे इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि हम दुनिया के तीसरे नंबर में पहुंच जाएंगे इकोनॉमिकली, पर ये मूव फ्रॉम 5 to 3 to 2 and eventually higher, that is a very big deal. It is very difficult, it is very tough, it will require very big effort, national effort from us. But it will also be other things which will be happening. ये जो समय जो आने वाला है, ये AI का होगा, ये EV का होगा, ये स्पेस का होगा, ये ड्रोन्स का होगा, ये ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन का होगा, ये लाइफस्टाइल का होगा। और इसके लिए हमें इसकी तैयारी करनी चाहिए, और हमें ये भी तैयारी करनी चाहिए कि दुनिया की भारत के पर अपेक्षा क्या होगी, कि आज वो ज़माना गया कि कुछ होता है यहाँ और लोग अमेरिका की तरफ देखते हैं। हमें जो है कम से कम हिंद महासागर में, और मैं कहूँगा हिंद प्रशांत, इंडो पैसिफिक में, उतनी तो हमारी क्षमता होनी चाहिए कि वहाँ कुछ भी चुनौती आए, भारत जो है आगे बढ़ के जिम्मेवारी लेने के लिए तैयार है। इसको हम फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर कहते हैं। हाउ डू यू प्रिपेयर इंडिया टू बी फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर? एंड फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर ये नहीं सोचिए कि किसी मंत्रालय या सेवा का विषय। हाँ, विदेश मंत्रालय जो है कोऑर्डिनेट करती होगी, पर आप देखते होंगे कोई भी ऑपरेशन हो, अभी जो है हाल ही में ऑपरेशन सिंधु हुआ, जहां हम लोग जो हैं, हमारे नागरिक जो इजराइल और ईरान में फंसे थे, उनको घर भारत वापस ले आए। पर इसके लिए आपको जानकारी होनी चाहिए कि इसमें एयरफोर्स का योगदान भी है, इंटेलिजेंस का भी है, कहीं जहां होम मिनिस्ट्री का होगा तो NDRF का, नेशनल डिज़ास्टर रिस्पांस का हो सकता है। तो इंटीग्रेटेड गवर्नमेंट एक साथ जो है, हम दुनिया के साथ कैसे हम अपने रिश्ते भी बढ़ाएं और ज़्यादा जिम्मेदारी भी लें। तो मैं आपको ये कहूँगा कि ये अगले 20 साल जो आपकी सर्विस की 20 साल जो होगी, आपको ये मानना चाहिए कि ये आज की स्थिति पर नहीं चले, बहुत बड़े माने चेंजेस आने वाले, और इस चेंजेस को आप ही लोगों को तैयार करना होगा। और आखिर में मैं एक चीज़ कहता हूँ, क्योंकि ये संकल्प फाउंडेशन का विषय भी है, हम लोग जो हैं डेमोक्रेसी की बात करते हैं। अब डेमोक्रेसी पे सबका गर्व तो होता है, बट डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में आप ये भी सोचिए, व्हाट इज एक्चुअली द सक्सेस ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी? आप इसको कैसे मेजर करेंगे? आप कैसे कहेंगे कि दिस डेमोक्रेसी वर्क्स एंड बेटर देन दैट डेमोक्रेसी? इट इज नॉट बाय वोटिंग रिकॉर्ड, इट इज नॉट बाय वोटिंग परसेंटेज। टू मी सक्सेसफुल डेमोक्रेसी इज व्हेन opportunity is given to entire society. That is when democracy is working. They have the right to express themselves, but it is not few people on behalf of whole society which is expressing themselves. तो आज मैं मानता हूँ, जब हम विकसित भारत की बात करते हैं, विकसित भारत जो है समावेशी भारत भी होना चाहिए, समावेशी भारत ही होना चाहिए। तो और ये हमने देखा है, ये हमने पॉलिटिक्स में देखा है। अगर आज की पार्लियामेंट आप इसकी तुलना करें 20 साल, 30 साल, 40 साल के पार्लियामेंट से, आपको दिखाई देता है कि आज देश के प्रतिनिधि कौन, जनता के प्रतिनिधि कौन है। वो वैसे नहीं हैं जो पहले थे, वो बड़े शहरों से नहीं आते। तो ये जो है इंक्लूसिव इंडिया, समावेशी भारत, this also extends to governance. That our system of governance will work best when it is most inclusive, most representative, and I really appreciate the Sankalp Foundation has made today selection entry into government much more representative. जो आपने मुझे नक्शा दिखाया कि हर प्रदेश से, हर प्रांत से और समाज के हर वर्ग से लोगों में ये विश्वास है और उनको सपोर्ट दिया जा रहा है कि वो आज सरकार में आए, गुड गवर्नेंस के भागीदार बने। तो मैं संकल्प फाउंडेशन का उनकी प्रशंसा भी करना चाहूँगा। और अंत में आप लोग जो अब भारत सरकार में एंट्री करेंगे, मैं आपको बस 3-4 अपनी ओर से सीनियर होने के तहत से मैं थोड़ा एडवाइस दूंगा। एक कि जहाँ भी आपको डिसीजन लेना पड़े, डू व्हाट यू थिंक इज राइट, दैट इज द बेस्ट गाइड। नंबर 2, डोंट एवर फॉरगेट योर रूट्स एंड डोंट एवर फॉरगेट योर फैमिली। नंबर 3, ये टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन वर्ल्ड है, आप लोगों को टेक सेवी होना है। हमारी गवर्नेंस जो है और टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड गवर्नेंस होगी, और ये डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है, ये अगर भारत में मैं कहूँगा सचमुच हमें परिवर्तन लाना है तो ये डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के माध्यम से हम लाएंगे। और आखिर में, क्योंकि अंत में मैं फॉरेन सर्विस का अफसर हूँ, आज मंत्री हूँ, वो अलग बात है। दुनिया में जो घटनाएं हो रही हैं, दुनिया के अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ और चैलेंजेस, इस पे ज़रूर नज़र रखिए कि जहाँ भी आज हम हों, हम एक ग्लोबलाइज दुनिया में रहते हैं और कोई भी जो है अपने आप को दुनिया से अलग नहीं रख सकता। तो दुनिया में जो भी इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स, वर्ल्ड डेवलपमेंट्स, इस पे भी थोड़ा ध्यान दें, वो भी बहुत अच्छी बात होगी। तो एक बार और मैं आप सबको जो परीक्षा में सफलता प्राप्त किए हैं, उन सबको मैं बधाई देता हूँ। उनको सम्मानित किया था। और मुझे ये खुशी की बात है कि एक पीके बासु जी जो है मेरे ब्रदर के बैचमेट हैं सर्विस में, रश्मि कपूर जी खुद मेरे बैचमेट हैं, और ओम अग्रवाल जी को भी मैं अपनी हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ। अब ये यूपीएससी का एग्ज़ाम जो है, मैं देखिए पिछले, अब मुझे क्या 48 साल हो गए जब से मैंने एग्ज़ाम पास किया, विदेश सेवा में भर्ती की, और दुनिया में करीब 200 देश, मैं करीब 120-130 में अभी तक जा चुका हूँ। यूपीएससी यूनिक, यूपीएससी जैसा कहीं भी किसी भी देश में ऐसा एंट्रेंस एग्ज़ाम गवर्नमेंट सर्विस के लिए नहीं। और मैं इस बात पे इसीलिए बल दे रहा हूँ कि जिन्होंने आज सफलता पाई है, हो सकता है कि उनके मन में हो कि भाई चलिए एग्ज़ाम पास कर दिया, आपने एक बहुत बड़ी जो सफलता जो आपको मिली है और जो जिम्मेदारी इस सफलता के साथ आती है, ये भी एक मैं कहूँगा बहुत यूनिक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, और आपको इस समय करियर के शुरुआत में ये समझना चाहिए। अब यूपीएससी एक किस्म से एक अग्नि परीक्षा है कि जितनी मेहनत होती है, आप देखिए आपने कम से कम साल तो गुजारा होगा। जिनका पहला प्रयास नहीं था, उन्होंने साल से ज़्यादा भी किया होगा। और इसकी जो प्रिपरेशन जो है, जितना टाइम लगता है, जो स्केल जो है, कितने लोग जो हैं इस एग्ज़ाम के लिए अपियर होते हैं, और जो आपकी ओर से जो एफर्ट जो है और उसके साथ जो टेंशन जो होता है, ये मैं सचमुच आपको कह सकता हूँ कि दुनिया में ये एक बहुत अनोखा, बहुत ही स्पेशल एक्सपीरियंस। अब ऐसे एक्सपीरियंस के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? एक तो वो सपोर्ट चाहिए। इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि आज जो बधाई मैं देता हूँ, मैं फैमिली को भी देता हूँ, क्योंकि जो आप लोग बैठे हैं, आपकी सफलता जो है इसके हकदार आपकी फैमिली भी है, ये कभी नहीं भूलिएगा। इसके लिए आत्मविश्वास भी चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर आप सोचेंगे, कभी ना कभी कोई ये समय जरूर हुआ होगा आपके पिछले साल में, 2 साल में, कहीं कुछ शंकाएं, कुछ दुविधाएं, कुछ डाउट कि भाई हो सकता नहीं हो सकता, पेपर कठिन है नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं तो आपके मन में ऐसी डाउट्स तो होती होंगी। और नॉर्मली क्या करते हैं लोग, वो अपने सर्कल में इसकी बात चर्चा करते हैं, अपने दोस्तों के पास जाते हैं, अपने टीचर्स के पास जाते हैं। पर ये जो, क्योंकि चैलेंज, चुनौती जो है इतनी बड़ी है, और आपके यहाँ से अपने एक किस्म से पूरा इतना प्रयास, आपके जीवन का 1 या 2 या 3 साल आपने इसको डेडिकेट किया है, आपको इसके अलावा जो है, अपने फैमिली के अलावा, अपने फ्रेंड्स के अलावा, आपको एक सपोर्ट सिस्टम चाहिए, आपको गाइडेंस चाहिए। और ये गाइडेंस और ये सपोर्ट सिस्टम आपको संकल्प फाउंडेशन देती है। तो इसीलिए आज जब मैं बैठ के मैं देख रहा था कि ऑल इंडिया रैंकिंग लिस्ट में कितने लोग जो हैं संकल्प के सपोर्ट से, संकल्प के माध्यम से सफल रहे हैं, मैं आज संकल्प फाउंडेशन को भी मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ कि ये आपका योगदान है क्योंकि गुड गवर्नेंस की हम बात करते हैं, गुड गवर्नेंस के अलग अलग पहल होते हैं, इसमें गुड पीपल टू बी पार्ट ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड इसमें आप लोगों का जो योगदान जो है उसकी मैं सराहना करता हूं, उसकी मैं प्रशंसा करता हूं। अब जब मैं अपनी जो उस समय की बात, जो मेरा जो अनुभव था, उस समय संकल्प फाउंडेशन नहीं था, बहुत कम ऐसे कोचिंग सर्कल्स भी थे, और ज़्यादातर जो है हमें सपोर्ट जो है हमारे अगल बगल में जो भी साथ थे, जो अगर हॉस्टल में थे, मैं हॉस्टल में था, JNU हॉस्टल में था उस समय, जो हॉस्टल वाले बाकी स्टूडेंट्स थे या टीचर्स थे या दोस्त थे, थोड़ी बहुत फैमिली भी थी। अब मेरा सौभाग्य था कि 1 साल पहले मेरे बड़े भाई जो हैं, PK बसु के दोस्त हैं, उन्होंने परीक्षा वो सफल हुए, वो IAS में उनकी रैंकिंग जो थी कि वो IAS में आए। और मुझे अभी भी याद है, मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ कि मेरे सब्जेक्ट सिलेक्शन में उन्होंने मुझे प्रोत्साहित किया, क्योंकि मेरे मन में उस समय थोड़ी सी वो डाउट थी कि एग्ज़ाम लें न लेंगे, अगर नहीं सफल होंगे तो क्या होगा, उसमें क्या चॉइस लें। एग्ज़ाम सिस्टम उस समय कुछ और था, ये प्रीलिम्स और मेन नहीं थे, एक ही एग्ज़ाम था। और मैंने जो है एक इतनी सहायता ली कि मेरे पेपर सिलेक्शन जो है, कुछ ऐसे सिलेक्शन किए जो मेरे भाई के नोट्स का मैं उपयोग कर सकूं। तो अगर उसके बाद अगले साल मैं वहाँ एग्ज़ाम में मुझे सफलता मिली, एक किस्म से उसकी क्रेडिट जो है मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ, कुछ तो क्रेडिट उनको भी मैं देता हूँ। अब एग्ज़ाम के बाद आप सब जानते हैं कि वो उसके बाद असली चुनौती इंटरव्यू में आती है।
एक नहीं, 2 नहीं, कई क्वालिटी चेक से गुजरता है ये सीमेंट, तभी तो परफेक्ट प्लस सीमेंट से बने परफेक्ट कंक्रीट। MP बिरला सीमेंट परफेक्ट प्लस कंक्रीट स्पेशल सीमेंट।
I am a software engineer myself. We like Polari School of Technology because of its industry-first curriculum. I mean, practical coding starts right from the first semester.
The mentors are also software professionals. They understand the tech industry. They have worked there.
And we have done our research. I mean, students have got international internships and the results are also very good, first.
और इंटरव्यू में जोक्स बताना थोड़ा खतरनाक ही होता है, तो उनका मैं मानता हूं कि वो उनकी किस्मत थी कि फॉरेन सर्विस वाले, क्योंकि हमको सुनने की आदत है, तो उनको अच्छा हुआ कि फॉरेन सर्विस के कोई चेयरमैन मिल गए, कम से कम जोक तो उन्होंने सुना और उसकी प्रशंसा भी की। पर देखिए, ये इंटरव्यू जो है, और अब इंटरव्यू आप लोगों का हो चुका है, तो आप भी एक किस्म से उस पर सोच सकते हैं और पुनर्विचार भी कर सकते हैं कि interview is not a function of knowledge. You can be a very smart person, very knowledgeable. You can know your subject very well. But interview में that 1, 2, 3 sentences पूरा गड़बड़ कर सकता है. Interview is about communication. It is about thinking at that time under pressure. That you know this 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it can make or unmake your life. So, अब जो हो गया उसके बाद बहुत आसान लगता है. But if you imagine that period, before you are going in for interview, कितना टेंशन था ना टेंशन. And once you come out, आपको उस समय भी पता नहीं कि भाई मैंने किया कैसे. So first you tell people जो भी मिला कि भाई ये पूछा मैंने ये जवाब दिया, पता नहीं मैंने ठीक दिया नहीं दिया. So I am saying this because communication skill today and communication skill, how do you behave under pressure, this is something which is very important. Not only for an interview. It is also important in life. It is important in your work. Because you will have responsibility. Up during responsibility you will have pressure. How do you perform under pressure? That is something which is, and it, you know, you are all in your 20s. अब आपका experience भी limited है. So with the passage of time, with experience, we handle it better. But how you have handled it, how you have done the interview, I think that is something which is really something you should value, something you should reflect on, something you should build upon. अब मैं अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा अनुभव शेयर करता हूँ. मेरा इंटरव्यू जो था वो 21 मार्च 1977 को था. कृष्ण गोपाल जी इस पे जानते होंगे. 21 मार्च 1977. That was the day emergency was revoked. So I go in for interview, Shahjahan Road, first person that morning. And that morning from previous day, the election result is coming. We were up all night watching the election result. सोए नहीं थे. It was showing on our face. And imagine I'm the first person as the defeat of the emergency rule is coming into the understanding of people. You walk into your interview. In a way, that is what got me through the interview. I was a political science student. So, my interview, the first question they asked me, अच्छा आप political science पढ़ते हैं, so please explain to us, ये election में हुआ क्या? Now, I had 2 takeaways from that experience. One, very senior people, many of them former government servants, senior government servants, कुछ लोग जो हैं secretary रह चुके हैं, important people of political standing, people from different services, intellectuals. They are asking a 22-year-old student कि भाई समझाओ हमें कि हुआ क्या इस election. Now, that is where I was lucky. It was a subject, because every Indian is interested in politics. If you are in JNU, you are super interested in politics. On top of it, I was a political science student. And we had all taken part in the 77 election campaign. We had all actually gone there and worked for the defeat of emergency in 77. So I forgot I was in the interview. I started giving them gyan, though I was 22. Okay. But my 2 takeaways. One, at that moment my communication skill somehow came together. I was able, because these were all people in a way who were connected, who were quite sympathetic to the government of the day at that time. to explain to the people who are sympathetic to the government of the day, bhai aap logon ko hua kya, without offending them, was actually quite a challenge. And the second thing which I learned that day, that ye Lutyens bubble jo hai na, these people were really shocked. They could not believe that this election result had happened, whereas for us as ordinary students, we could see that there was a wave against emergency. So from that day, I had two carry-aways from my interview. How to communicate under pressure and do it without offending people. How do you persuade? How do you explain? This was one carry-away, and the second, which was for me a political carry-away, that important people may be living in a bubble and not realizing actually what is happening in the country. And people on the field, because we thought of ourselves, we were students who had done campaigns. We had gone, I remember at that time going with my friends, we went to Bhiwani, we went to Muzaffarnagar, how we had picked up the sense on the ground. But people who sitting in Delhi with all the information from all the systems, somehow they missed it. So with that memory, let me come back to all of you. You are today roughly, I would say about 25, 26 in age. When independent India turns 100, you will be 47, 48. So this era, this 20 years, जो हम कहते हैं अमृत काल है, विकसित भारत की तरफ हमें जाना है, this is your era. It is your era because you will have to work, you will have to deliver, and you will be the beneficiaries of this era. You will be the leaders of this era. We say today that, India will become by 2047. Definitely we know for sure by 2030 we will be the third largest economy. By 2047 we will be closing the gap between 3 and 2. So I want you to think not just a sense कि भाई एग्जाम पास कर लिया, सर्विस में आ गए, feeling very happy, which you should, but I want you to think 20 years ahead. I want you to think that अगले 20 साल में जब हम विकसित भारत की दिशा में जाएंगे, आपका इसमें क्या योगदान होगा, और what is also the mindset you have to bring for Viksit Bharat to be successful. And I want to put some thoughts before you. One, I heard some young colleagues say that we are very happy that today हमें सर्विस करने का एक अवसर मिला है. Serving your nation. Serving your nation is, there can be nothing of greater pride than serving your nation. But do remember, at the end of the day, we are all a service. All of you who have entered, your Indian administrative service, your Indian foreign service, your Indian railway service, your Indian police service, your Indian revenue service. Important word, service. And something very interesting is happening in the world of service. There was a time कि जो सरकार कहती थी, जो देती थी, लोग मानते थे उसको. ये ज़माना अब बदल गया. अब अगर आप पब्लिक में देखें, वहाँ एक जागरूकता है, वहाँ एक सेल्फ अवेयरनेस है, लोग अपना हक पहचानते हैं. Expectations of the public have gone up. Expectation of service given by government has gone up. और खुद मैं अपने अनुभव से आपको बता सकता हूँ, आप में से ज़्यादातर लोगों के पास पासपोर्ट तो होगा ना. अब एक समय था, पासपोर्ट मिलने के लिए लोगों को 1, 2, 3 साल लगते थे. ये खाली समय का विषय नहीं था. अगर आपको कहीं जान पहचान नहीं थी तो आपका पासपोर्ट एप्लीकेशन कोई देखता ही नहीं था। जब 77 में मैंने फॉरेन सर्विस एंटर किया तो हमारे कॉलोनी में जो रहते थे उनको लगा कि भाई हम किसी को जानते हैं जो हमें कम से कम पासपोर्ट दिला सकते हैं, तो ये महत्व था उनके मन में। अब आप देखिए पासपोर्ट के बारे में क्या हुआ है। आज आप पासपोर्ट के लिए अप्लाई करते हैं, आपका पासपोर्ट और खासकर जहां आप अपना बेसिक डॉक्यूमेंटेशन देते हैं, आधार देते हैं, पैन कार्ड देते हैं, ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस देते हैं, आपका पासपोर्ट जो है कुछ दिनों में, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 1-2 हफ्ते, महीने के अंदर आपका पासपोर्ट आ जाता है। बट ये नहीं है कि लोग कहते हैं अच्छा भाई पहले साल लगते थे अब कुछ हफ्ते लगते हैं तो चलिए बड़े खुश। नहीं, पब्लिक की प्रेशर है कि हमें तो अब आदत हो गई है कि 4 हफ्ते 6 हफ्ते में मिलते हैं, पर वहाँ डिले हो गया तो आप कुछ करिए इसका, या इतने डॉक्यूमेंट आप क्यों पूछते हैं, इसको कम करिए। तो पब्लिक इज कॉन्स्टेंटली प्रेशराइजिंग इम्प्रूव सर्विस। हमें कभी जो है, जो सरकार में है, हमें कभी ये नहीं मानना चाहिए कि हम एक लेवल के पहुंचे हैं और उसके कारण अब लोग संतुष्ट हैं, और उनको संतुष्ट होना भी नहीं चाहिए। जब तक पब्लिक प्रेशर जो है, पब्लिक प्रेशर इज अ वे ऑफ इंप्रूविंग परफॉर्मेंस। इट इज ओनली बाय इंप्रूविंग परफॉर्मेंस कंट्री विल ग्रो। सो टुडे व्हेन वी से हमें वी सर्व द नेशन, सर्विंग द नेशन इज ऑल्सो a matter of pride, but it is also something which we should set कि हमें अपना performance, how does every generation improve on the performance of the previous generation. Second aspect is transforming the nation, जो परिवर्तन हमें रोज दिखाई दे रहा है। और ये परिवर्तन जो है, क्योंकि हम इस परिवर्तन के बीच में हैं, कभी कभी इसका महत्व हम खुद नहीं जानते। जब हम बाहर जाते हैं, देश के बाहर जाते हैं, और लोग हमसे पूछते हैं कि भारत में हो क्या रहा है, और अगर हम विकासशील देश जाए, ज़्यादातर उनकी चुनौतियां जो हैं हमारी। जैसे अब मैं इजिप्ट गया, उनके यहाँ पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम है अनाज का, फूड का, उनके यहाँ गेहूँ खाते हैं, और जहाँ पीडीएस है उनके यहाँ दिक्कत है कि लीकेज का विषय। या कहीं आप और जाएं जहाँ पब्लिक हेल्थ वैक्सीनेशन का हो, या कोविड के समय में ये कोविड वैक्सीनेशन कैसे करें। तो आज जो है हमारे यहाँ अगर आप देखेंगे, पोषण से लेकर पेंशन तक, जब हम आवास योजना की बात करते हैं, घर देना, जहाँ प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना की बात करते हैं कि आज जो है देश में 60% लोग जो हैं उनको डायरेक्ट न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट मिलता है। हम जब कहते हैं कि हमने आवास योजना के तहत 4 करोड़ घर दिए हैं, उसका मतलब है कि हमने पूरे जापान की आबादी को जो है कवर किया है पिछले दशक। अगर आप अन्न योजना के आंकड़े देखें, पूरा यूरोप और अमेरिका की जो आबादी जो है उससे ज़्यादा लोग जो हैं हर महीने उनको न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट मिलती। अब कुछ भी आप मुद्रा प्रोग्राम देखें, कुछ भी हमारे योजना देखें, कुछ भी हमारे कार्यक्रम देखें, जिस स्केल में आज जो परिवर्तन हो रहा है, और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की भी बात करें कि मैं कभी कभी मुझे 5 मिनट मिलता है कहीं किसी को कुछ कहने में कि ताकि मैं इनको इम्प्रेस करूं। मुझे एक बार जर्मनी जाना पड़ा, उन्होंने कहा कि समय की सीमा है, आपका पूरा स्पीच जो है 5 मिनट के अंदर दीजिए। तो मैंने उनको शुरू ऐसे किया कि आज का भारत जो है हर साल 7 नए एयरपोर्ट बनाता है। आज का भारत जो है हर साल 1 या 2 नए मेट्रो सिस्टम खोलता है। आज का भारत जो है हर रोज 12 किलोमीटर रेलवे ट्रैक लगाता है, हर रोज 28 किलोमीटर हाईवे बनाता है। तो जब आप ये परिवर्तन, ये आंकड़े देते हैं और हम इस परिवर्तन के बीच में हम लोग, हमारी ज़िंदगी कट रही, तो हमें जो है इसके बारे में माने उत्साह भी होना चाहिए, गर्व भी होना चाहिए, जागरूकता भी होनी चाहिए कि हम इसको कैसे आगे ले जाएं और आपकी पीढ़ी जो है ये इसको अगले लेवल तक ले जाएगी। फिर विषय आती है नेशनल सिक्योरिटी, राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा की। और एक समय था जब हम सुरक्षा की बात करते थे कि लोगों के मन में था सुरक्षा जो है या तो ये फौज का काम है या पुलिस वालों का काम। आज की परिभाषा कुछ और है। हम बात करते हैं कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव नेशनल पावर, माने जब हमारी टेक्नोलॉजी हो, हमारी इकोनॉमी हो, हमारी क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, ये सब आज हर चीज़ जो है सुरक्षा के साथ जुड़ी हुई है। और जब तक ऑलराउंड डेवलपमेंट नहीं होता भारत सुरक्षित नहीं होगा। गुड गवर्नेंस भी सुरक्षा के साथ जुड़ी हुई। तो आप जो है, आपकी जिम्मेदारी जो है सर्विस की है, परिवर्तन की है, सुरक्षा की है। और अगर आपका सौभाग्य हो कि आपको ऐसा अवसर आएगा कुछ मंच में या कुछ ऐसे घटनाओं में जहां आप भारत के प्रतिनिधि हो सकते हैं, और ये मैं आपको कह सकता हूं कि उससे कोई बड़ी बात, माने जो भी आप कहें, representing India abroad, representing India before the world is the greatest privilege, greatest honor that any Indian can have. So, let me put two other points before you. I have said, अच्छा अगले 20 साल में ये होगा, इसके लिए आप तैयारी करिए, आपकी ये मानसिकता होनी चाहिए, आपका ये संकल्प होना चाहिए। अब ये 20 साल में होगा क्या? जैसे मैंने कहा कि 2030 तक मुझे इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि हम दुनिया के तीसरे नंबर में पहुंच जाएंगे इकोनॉमिकली। पर ये मूव फ्रॉम 5 to 3 to 2 and eventually higher, that is a very big deal. It is very difficult, it is very tough, it will require very big effort, national effort from us. But it will also be other things which will be happening. ये जो समय जो आने वाला है, ये AI का होगा, ये EV का होगा, ये स्पेस का होगा, ये ड्रोन्स का होगा, ये ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन का होगा, ये लाइफस्टाइल का होगा। और इसके लिए हमें इसकी तैयारी करनी चाहिए। और हमें ये भी तैयारी करनी चाहिए कि दुनिया की भारत के पर अपेक्षा क्या होगी। कि आज वो ज़माना गया कि कुछ होता है यहाँ और लोग अमेरिका की तरफ देखते हैं। हमें जो है कम से कम हिंद महासागर में, और मैं कहूँगा हिंद प्रशांत, इंडो पैसिफिक में, उतनी तो हमारी क्षमता होनी चाहिए कि वहाँ कुछ भी चुनौती आए, भारत जो है आगे बढ़ के जिम्मेदारी लेने के लिए तैयार है। इसको हम फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर कहते हैं। हाउ डू यू प्रिपेयर इंडिया टू बी फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर? एंड फर्स्ट रेस्पॉन्डर ये नहीं सोचिए कि किसी मंत्रालय या सेवा का विषय। हाँ, विदेश मंत्रालय जो है कोऑर्डिनेट करती होगी, पर आप देखते होंगे कोई भी ऑपरेशन हो, अभी जो है हाल ही में ऑपरेशन सिंधु हुआ, जहाँ हम लोग जो हैं, हमारे नागरिक जो इजराइल और ईरान में फंसे थे, उनको घर भारत वापस ले आए। पर इसके लिए आपको जानकारी होनी चाहिए कि इसमें एयरफोर्स का योगदान भी है, इंटेलिजेंस का भी है, कहीं जहाँ होम मिनिस्ट्री का होगा तो NDRF का, नेशनल डिज़ास्टर रिस्पांस का हो सकता है। तो इंटीग्रेटेड गवर्नमेंट एक साथ जो है हम दुनिया के साथ कैसे हम अपने रिश्ते भी बढ़ाएं और ज़्यादा जिम्मेदारी भी लें। तो मैं आपको ये कहूँगा कि ये अगले 20 साल जो आपकी सर्विस की 20 साल जो होगी, आपको ये मानना चाहिए कि ये आज की स्थिति पर नहीं चले, बहुत बड़े माने चेंजेस आने वाले, और इस चेंजेस को आप ही लोगों को तैयार करना होगा। और आखिर में मैं एक चीज़ कहता हूँ, क्योंकि ये संकल्प फाउंडेशन का विषय भी है। हम लोग जो हैं डेमोक्रेसी की बात करते हैं, अब डेमोक्रेसी पे सबका गर्व तो होता है, बट डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में आप ये भी सोचिए, व्हाट इज एक्चुअली द सक्सेस ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी। आप इसको कैसे मेजर करेंगे? आप कैसे कहेंगे कि दिस डेमोक्रेसी वर्क्स एंड बेटर देन दैट डेमोक्रेसी? इट इज नॉट बाय वोटिंग रिकॉर्ड, इट इज नॉट बाय वोटिंग परसेंटेज। टू मी सक्सेसफुल डेमोक्रेसी इज व्हेन opportunity is given to entire society. That is when democracy is working. They have the right to express themselves, but it is not few people on behalf of whole society which is expressing themselves. तो आज मैं मानता हूं जब हम विकसित भारत की बात करते हैं, विकसित भारत जो है समावेशी भारत भी होना चाहिए, समावेशी भारत ही होना चाहिए। तो और ये हमने देखा, ये हमने पॉलिटिक्स में देखा। अगर आज की पार्लियामेंट आप इसकी तुलना करें 20 साल, 30 साल, 40 साल के पार्लियामेंट से, आपको दिखाई देता है कि आज देश के प्रतिनिधि कौन, जनता के प्रतिनिधि कौन है। वो वैसे नहीं हैं जो पहले थे, वो बड़े शहरों से नहीं आते। तो ये जो है इंक्लूसिव इंडिया, समावेशी भारत, this also extends to governance. That our system of governance will work best when it is most inclusive, most representative. And I really appreciate that Sankalp Foundation has made today selection entry into government much more representative. जो आपने मुझे नक्शा दिखाया कि हर प्रदेश से, हर प्रांत से और समाज के हर वर्ग से लोगों में ये विश्वास है और उनको सपोर्ट दिया जा रहा है कि वो आज सरकार में आए, गुड गवर्नेंस के भागीदार बने। तो मैं संकल्प फाउंडेशन का उनकी प्रशंसा भी करना चाहूँगा। और अंत में आप लोग जो अब भारत सरकार में एंट्री करेंगे, मैं आपको बस 3-4 अपनी ओर से सीनियर होने के तहत से मैं थोड़ा एडवाइस दूंगा। एक कि जहाँ भी आपको डिसीजन लेना पड़े, डू व्हाट यू थिंक इज राइट, दैट इज द बेस्ट गाइड। नंबर 2, डोंट एवर फॉरगेट योर रूट्स एंड डोंट एवर फॉरगेट योर फैमिली। नंबर 3, ये टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन वर्ल्ड है, आप लोगों को टेक सेवी होना है। हमारी गवर्नेंस जो है और टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड गवर्नेंस होगी, और ये डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है, ये अगर भारत में मैं कहूँगा सचमुच हमें परिवर्तन लाना है तो ये डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के माध्यम से हम लाएंगे। और आखिर में, क्योंकि अंत में मैं फॉरेन सर्विस का अफसर हूँ, आज मंत्री हूँ, वो अलग बात है। दुनिया में जो घटनाएं हो रही हैं, दुनिया के अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ और चैलेंजेस, इस पे ज़रूर नज़र रखिए कि जहाँ भी आज हम हों, हम एक ग्लोबलाइज दुनिया में रहते हैं और कोई भी जो है अपने आप को दुनिया से अलग नहीं रख सकता। तो दुनिया में जो भी इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स, वर्ल्ड डेवलपमेंट्स, इस पे भी थोड़ा ध्यान दें, वो भी बहुत अच्छी बात होगी। तो एक बार और मैं आप सबको जो परीक्षा में सफलता प्राप्त किए हैं, उन सबको मैं बधाई देता हूँ। बाकी सबको मेरी ओर से एक बार और नमस्कार। संतोष पाठक जी, श्री लोहिया जी, श्री विनीत गुप्ता जी, साथियों, मित्रों, सबसे पहले तो मैं संकल्प फाउंडेशन का आभार प्रकट करना चाहूँगा कि आज उन्होंने मुझे ये अवसर दिया कि जो लोग यूपीएससी एग्ज़ाम को जिन्होंने अभी पास किया है, अपने जीवन के एक नए चरण का प्रारंभ जिनका हो रहा है, उनसे मिलना, उनको संबोधित करना, उनका स्वागत करना सरकार में, उसका एक अवसर दिया है। जिन्होंने ये एग्ज़ाम जिन्होंने सफलता पाई है, मैं उनको और उनके परिवारों को मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। और मैंने जानबूझ के परिवार को मेंशन किया है, आप समझेंगे क्यों। अभी कार्यक्रम में हम लोगों ने 3 हमारे वरिष्ठ साथी जो हैं उनको सम्मानित किया था। और मुझे ये खुशी की बात है कि एक पीके बासु जी जो हैं मेरे ब्रदर के बैचमेट हैं सर्विस में, रश्मि कपूर जी खुद मेरे बैचमेट हैं, और ओम अग्रवाल जी को भी मैं अपनी हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ। अब ये यूपीएससी का एग्ज़ाम जो है, मैं देखिए पिछले, अब मुझे क्या 48 साल हो गए जब से मैंने एग्ज़ाम पास किया, विदेश सेवा में भर्ती की, और दुनिया में करीब 200 देश, मैं करीब 120-130 में अभी तक जा चुका हूँ। यूपीएससी यूनिक, यूपीएससी जैसा कहीं भी किसी भी देश में ऐसा एंट्रेंस एग्ज़ाम गवर्नमेंट सर्विस के लिए नहीं। और मैं इस बात पे इसीलिए बल दे रहा हूँ कि जिन्होंने आज सफलता पाई है, हो सकता है कि उनके मन में हो कि भाई चलिए एग्ज़ाम पास कर दिया, आपने एक बहुत बड़ी जो सफलता जो आपको मिली है और जो जिम्मेदारी इस सफलता के साथ आती है, ये भी एक मैं कहूँगा बहुत यूनिक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, और आपको इस समय करियर के शुरुआत में ये समझना चाहिए। अब यूपीएससी एक किस्म से एक अग्नि परीक्षा है कि जितनी मेहनत होती है, आप देखिए आपने कम से कम साल तो गुजारा होगा। जिनका पहला प्रयास नहीं था उन्होंने साल से ज़्यादा भी किया होगा। और इसकी जो प्रिपरेशन जो है, जितना टाइम लगता है, जो स्केल जो है, कितने लोग जो हैं इस एग्ज़ाम के लिए अपियर होते हैं, और जो आपकी ओर से जो एफर्ट जो है और उसके साथ जो टेंशन जो होता है, ये मैं सचमुच आपको कह सकता हूँ कि दुनिया में ये एक बहुत अनोखा, बहुत ही स्पेशल एक्सपीरियंस। अब ऐसे एक्सपीरियंस के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? एक तो वो सपोर्ट चाहिए। इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि आज जो बधाई मैं देता हूँ, मैं फैमिली को भी देता हूँ, क्योंकि जो आप लोग बैठे हैं, आपकी सफलता जो है इसके हकदार आपकी फैमिली भी है, ये कभी नहीं भूलिएगा। इसके लिए आत्मविश्वास भी चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर आप सोचेंगे कभी ना कभी कोई ये समय जरूर हुआ होगा आपके पिछले साल में, 2 साल में, कहीं कुछ शंकाएं, कुछ दुविधाएं, कुछ डाउट कि भाई हो सकता नहीं हो सकता, पेपर कठिन है नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं तो आपके मन में ऐसी डाउट्स तो होती होंगी। और नॉर्मली क्या करते हैं लोग, वो अपने सर्कल में इसकी बात चर्चा करते हैं, अपने दोस्तों के पास जाते हैं, अपने टीचर्स के पास जाते हैं। पर ये जो, क्योंकि चैलेंज, चुनौती जो है इतनी बड़ी है, और आपके यहाँ से अपने एक किस्म से पूरा इतना प्रयास, आपके जीवन का 1 या 2 या 3 साल आपने इसको डेडिकेट किया है, आपको इसके अलावा जो है, अपने फैमिली के अलावा, अपने फ्रेंड्स के अलावा, आपको एक सपोर्ट सिस्टम चाहिए, आपको गाइडेंस चाहिए। और ये गाइडेंस और ये सपोर्ट सिस्टम आपको संकल्प फाउंडेशन देती। तो इसीलिए आज जब मैं बैठ के मैं देख रहा था कि ऑल इंडिया रैंकिंग लिस्ट में कितने लोग जो हैं संकल्प के सपोर्ट से, संकल्प के माध्यम से सफल रहे हैं, मैं आज संकल्प फाउंडेशन को भी मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ कि ये आपका योगदान है क्योंकि गुड गवर्नेंस की हम बात करते हैं। गुड गवर्नेंस के अलग अलग पहल होते हैं, इसमें गुड पीपल टू बी पार्ट ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। एंड इसमें आप लोगों का जो योगदान जो है उसकी मैं सराहना करता हूं, उसकी मैं प्रशंसा करता हूं। अब जब मैं अपनी जो उस समय की बात, जो मेरा जो अनुभव था, उस समय संकल्प फाउंडेशन नहीं था, बहुत कम ऐसे कोचिंग सर्कल्स भी थे, और ज़्यादातर जो है हमें सपोर्ट जो है हमारे अगल बगल में जो भी साथ थे, जो अगर हॉस्टल में थे, मैं हॉस्टल में था, जेएनयू हॉस्टल में था उस समय, जो हॉस्टल वाले बाकी स्टूडेंट्स थे या टीचर्स थे या दोस्त थे, थोड़ी बहुत फैमिली भी थी। अब मेरा सौभाग्य था कि 1 साल पहले मेरे बड़े भाई जो हैं पीके बसु के दोस्त हैं, उन्होंने परीक्षा वो सफल हुए, वो आईएएस में उनको उनकी रैंकिंग जो थी कि वो आईएएस में आए। और मुझे अभी भी याद है, मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ कि मेरे सब्जेक्ट सिलेक्शन में उन्होंने मुझे प्रोत्साहित किया, क्योंकि मेरे मन में उस समय थोड़ी सी वो डाउट थी कि एग्ज़ाम लें ना लें, लेंगे अगर नहीं सफल होंगे तो क्या होगा, उसमें क्या चॉइस लें। एग्ज़ाम सिस्टम उस समय कुछ और था, ये प्रीलिम्स और मेन नहीं थे, एक ही एग्ज़ाम था। और मैंने जो है एक इतनी सहायता ली कि मेरे पेपर सिलेक्शन जो है कुछ ऐसे सिलेक्शन किए जो मेरे भाई के नोट्स का मैं उपयोग कर सकता हूँ। तो अगर उसके बाद अगले साल मैं वहाँ एग्ज़ाम में मुझे सफलता मिली, एक किस्म से उसकी क्रेडिट जो है मैं अभी भी उनको कहता हूँ, कुछ तो क्रेडिट उनको भी मैं देता हूँ। अब एग्ज़ाम के बाद आप सब जानते हैं कि वो उसके बाद असली चुनौती इंटरव्यू में आती है, और इंटरव्यू में जोक्स बताना थोड़ा खतरनाक ही होता है। तो उनका मैं मानता हूं कि वो उनकी किस्मत थी कि फॉरेन सर्विस वाले, क्योंकि हमको सुनने की आदत है, तो उनको अच्छा हुआ कि फॉरेन सर्विस के कोई चेयरमैन मिल गए, कम से कम जोक तो उन्होंने सुना और उसकी प्रशंसा भी की। पर देखिए इंटरव्यू जो है, और अब इंटरव्यू आप लोगों का हो चुका है तो आप भी एक किस्म से उस पर सोच सकते हैं और पुनर्विचार भी कर सकते हैं कि इंटरव्यू इज नॉट अ फंक्शन ऑफ नॉलेज। यू कैन बी अ वेरी स्मार्ट पर्सन, वेरी knowledgeable, you can know your subject.
So clearly I don't need to introduce our next guest. It's not often that a rock star welcome is reserved for a minister, but not surprising at all. We've seen this many, many times. I have a picture that's very representative of the kind of applause we just heard, Dr. Jaishankar. First of all, welcome to the India Today Conclave. Not only has this picture spawned a million memes, and you see it everywhere you go on social media, but, you know, for a minister whose every word social media hangs on to, everything goes viral, it really doesn't hurt if you look like this. Because it just goes way, way wider. So I'm going to start with that image. Let's keep that image there because not that people haven't seen it enough, but I want to keep that image on the screen. Dr. Jaishankar, it's not just a meme, it's not just an image. The things you say as India's External Affairs Minister resonate in the media, on social media. The things you say, apart from just your foreign policies and the decisions you've taken, your images go viral as well. What does that virality mean to you, sir? How do you read that virality? It's not every day that you see this kind of thing. That's why I ask.
Look, that's a very unfair question to start with. You know, I just try to be myself, and not always like that. But the point is today, if one think about it, to be India's foreign minister at a time when we are rising, if you use any metric, economy, influence, all of that, and quite honestly, to be a foreign minister in a Modi government, it kind of sets your behavioral approach.
Does it? Are you aware that there is this large audience hanging on to everything that you're saying? And, applauding all the things you say. Oh, there's another Jaishankar zinger. He said something. 30 seconds from a 1 hour speech will just go crazy viral, millions of views. Are you aware of that when you speak?
I think you got to keep it in proportion, okay? So, what, Actually, if you look at it, what has been happening is we've been putting out our narrative, our case, our arguments. And the world's been, the last 5 years, unusually contentious and effervescent. Things are happening. Things are happening, people make points strongly, and you end up in situations where you hold your ground, or you contest it, or you counter it, or you... So it's very, it's a product of circumstances, a product of times, I would say.
Okay, come on, Shiv. 4 decades in diplomacy, 5 years in politics. Let's bring him into his comfort zone, China. So there's a massive challenge, but also opportunities. You have tried to manage the relationship with China. It's been difficult, not just for India, but across the world. One of the biggest challenges for the world today is China and the growing aggression of China in many parts of the world, not just in our region. How do you look at tackling China, handling China, and how do you see taking that challenge forward in the next government should you win?
Look, I would say, Gita, the first thing is we have to stop pretending that everything is nice, stop being worried to express what we feel, stop using terminology which doesn't work for us, may work for them. So I think being straight, being public, being upfront is the starting point. Now, the fact is, it's not today I agree, since 2020 the relationship has become much more complicated. I accept that. But it was building up over a period of time, and what was happening was because we weren't honest about it even to ourselves, we weren't really articulating it and frankly even strategizing accordingly. There was a time when we actually said China is a strategic partner. If I were to today say this to anybody, people would be baffled, but yet that was the official description at one point of time. So the first thing is we've got to recognize today that we have really, in a way, a very challenging, competitive neighbor. There are serious issues over a period of time in our history. Many of those issues have not been resolved. Some have aggravated. It isn't just a boundary issue. There are, we have common neighbors. We have a common periphery. There is competition there. There are very major economic issues and when you say what do we do, as I said, for a start, we've got to be honest about it. We've got to call out things when they go wrong, but we also need to prepare, and the preparation, a lot of it has to be the domestic preparation. If you are dealing with China, you got to have an economy which is geared up for it. Now we have, for example, it's only in the last decade we have paid attention to manufacturing. Now, because of the neglect of manufacturing, we started our economic reforms 30 years ago, but we didn't take it into the manufacturing world. So we have these, vulnerabilities or these gaps, which make it very, challenging to compete. So we got to get all those things right. So you have to diagnose it, you got to prepare for it, and then you have to express it and you have to manage it. Because you also don't want it to, sort of going completely awry.
Dr. Jaishankar, just to push the China question a step further, it'll soon be 4 years, like you said, from 2020 things have gone south. The military standoff turns 4 in just a few weeks from now, sir. Can you tell, there have been many rounds of military level talks, and it has appeared for a while now that the reality is that a resolution of this entire thing is going to have to be diplomatic. Can you tell us how the next government will resolve this, sir? Because it's a big military standoff that's been on for 4 years now.
Well, I would say the scenario that I can foresee has been that they have today massed a very large number of troops along the LAC. So have we as a counter deployment. The resulting situation, and you saw that, in a way, unfortunately go wrong in Galwan, is when troops are very close up. There are all the dangers you associate with that. So the focus in the military discussions has been really about disengagement, so that very close up deployment of troops. Because remember, both of us are very forward deployed. This is not where, in the last many decades was our natural deployment. So how do we resolve that? How do we do it in a manner in which it works for both of us? There are issues related to patrolling, because when you are deployed that close up, then there are patrolling issues, obstruction issues, the workaround issues, all of which adds to a very complicated matrix. Thereafter, there is the next round of issues, which is really what you would call de-escalation, which is the fact that both sides, we as a reactive posture, have brought very large number of troops with weaponry very, very close up. So I think there's a lot to it, and clearly it is something where we have to be both patient but also very persevering.
Okay, let's zoom out a little. We are yet to solve tensions in our own region, but India is indeed playing a key role as peacemaker in other parts of the world, a major role when it comes to how the world is looking to India for mediation. Russia, Ukraine, the situation there, Israel-Hamas war, the situation there. But a very specific question, Dr. Jaishankar. There was a report which said that the United States of America looked to India, as also China, and that Prime Minister Modi did avert a nuclear attack by Russia. Will you confirm?
Look, we have, since the conflict in Ukraine started, there have been a number of issues in which we've been involved. We haven't been very public and explicit about all of them. In many cases, one or the other party or a third party or an international organization has asked us to weigh in some form. And if we believe that doing so was helpful, because, ideally at this time, I would say, frankly, the world wants this conflict to end. But it's not something that anybody is expecting in the near term, unfortunately. So the most sensible thing to do is to say, okay, let me at least help to solve one part of a problem or reduce one tension or relieve one worry. So there have been a lot of these situations, quite honestly, more than you probably know, and including sometimes fairly recent ones. We do what a responsible country which has good relations with everybody does.
Did he weigh in on a nuclear attack? Did he weigh in? Was there a conversation?
As I said, we have been continuously doing whatever we can to reduce tensions, to relieve worries, to see that things don't happen which make it worse.
I can tell you you can't take the diplomat out of Dr. Jaishankar.
Yeah, you're not going to get him to say we averted a nuclear attack. Okay, let's move from Russia, Ukraine now to the Indian Ocean, Dr. Jaishankar, where with the Red Sea, with the fallout of what's happened between Israel and Gaza, there's been a very positive spotlight on India and its role in the Arabian Sea, in the Indian Ocean. We're also seeing an elevated level of aggression from the Chinese, whether it is in Maldives, whether it is elsewhere, as far as its own intentions as far as the Indian Ocean are concerned. Can you tell us how India is navigating this? It's a complex, shape-shifting issue. Can you tell us how the next government will handle this? This is a situation that is likely to become a bigger churn, sir.
Well, look, I think there are multiple things which are happening in the Indian Ocean. One part of it, as you referred to, which is Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, etc. We are, in fact, right now we have an ongoing situation with one of our ships, INS Calcutta. We are, again, as a responsible country, contributing our bit for maritime safety, security, dealing with the, prospect of drone and missile attacks on shipping, countering piracy. And this is important for people in our country to recognize and appreciate, because the era when the global commons would be looked after by other people, that era is now behind us. So countries like us have to weigh in more, be more active, to use our forces for common good in a way. And the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden deployment, we have, I think, about 12 ships there. So if you look in terms of national commitment, we would be among the larger national presence, not the largest, but among the larger national presence out there. The second part of it would be, again, if you've seen the last 10 years, we've been very active as a first responder. That when you have natural disasters, it was the Yemen civil war, it was going back to 2015, a water crisis in Maldives, a landslide in Sri Lanka, a cyclone in Myanmar. So where, again, now I contrast that, with, say, 2 decades ago, where again, when we had the tsunami in 2004, essentially, apart from India, really much of the succor and support came from outside forces in a way. So we have to see, it could be a conflict kind of situation, it could be a natural disaster, but our responsibilities and our activities in the region have actually grown tremendously in the last decade. The other part of it is the strategic part of it, which is the natural contestation between states, the competition out there, countries, maneuvering, out-maneuvering, countering, exerting influence, countering that influence. That is something which is part of the competitive nature of world politics. Now, there will be ups and downs. That is also to be expected. Often, political developments in one or the other country can impact it. Looking back, perhaps we should have been strategically much more aware than we were. For example, when Hambantota was first built, I don't think there was sufficient understanding in this country. We are talking 2008, 9, 10, roughly that period, about the implications that it would have for a country like India. We are today very aware. We are very active. If you look, actually, I'm giving you a kind of a bureaucratic MEA speak explanation. But, when we actually had a strategy called Sagar, the whole idea of Sagar is end-to-end look at the ocean as a consolidated space. It could be island states, it could be the oceans, it could be a regional effort. Don't deal with it in bits and pieces, and be aware of your strategic interests and do what you have to do to safeguard it. So these are all, look, there's no end to it. This is a permanent objective of a country for whom an ocean space that is so proximate to it and where we have such a central spacing. We will have to be continuously and persistently active out there.
There's also a concern, Dr. Jaishankar, when it comes to social media, how foreign policy is decided, not decided in the social media space today. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes we have false narratives being built in that space. How do you look at that? How does one counter that at a time when you have biases coming in? Various countries have their own perspectives. There's hypocrisy in how they see India's position on certain matters that don't suit their interests. How does one challenge and beat this?
Well, look, I am paid to fix foreign policy. I'm not paid to fix social media. To be honest, nobody can fix social media. The nature of the platform is such that everything which you somewhat disapprovingly state is actually something which gets more eyeballs in social media.
But what about the biases from international
it will happen. I take it as a given.
countries?
Look, I may not like it, but because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I assume this is a medium which is very angular, which is very naturally given to strong views, where the sense of being responsible for what you are posting is somewhat diminished. These are the facts of life with which we operate. So you counter it fairly rapidly. So the days when, let us say, the XP division of MEA could sit over something for a few hours or a day, etc., those are behind us. On the run, sometimes we see a tweet, we counter it, frankly, sometimes within minutes.
But Dr. Jaishankar, you say you're here to fix foreign policy and not social media, but that's a constant side effect. Do you see that as a kind of affirmation from millions of people who are listening to you as Dr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Ministry, busting narratives that have prevailed for a long time against India? We've seen this often, especially when you're abroad, when Western journalists have asked you questions, you have had answers that have, gone especially viral because it seems to bust a certain narrative.
Also, the language of MEA has changed quite a bit, significantly so. It has.
Well, look, we've adjusted to the times too. As I said, it's a reality. So if it is a reality and it's a medium where short, sharp, impactful expressions are required, then we sort of, move out of our old comfort zone and adjust ourselves to respond in that way. We would change, and it is actually happening. I see the point. But, since I cannot change the nature of social media, I have to communicate, ideally at least recognizing it, but if I could, actually even utilizing it so that I can also get ahead in the game by saying the right things in the right way.
So what's your sharp, short, insightful reaction to the elections in Pakistan?
In 30 seconds.
Does silence count?
Okay, I hope you're not going to be silent for the other election that I'm going to ask you about, which is the US election. We'll come to the other election right at the end, but the US election, Dr. Jaishankar, also this year, also a very interesting one to watch. The Republicans, the Democrats, Biden, Trump. Give us an inside view of how a system prepares for this kind of thing. Good relations with the Biden administration, with Trump as well before that. How does the system here prepare for this?
It's interesting in two or three ways. One, because we are not part of an alliance system, we don't have all the consequential issues that come out of it. Okay? Because if you look today at the world and, you listen in, I was in Munich, for example, at the security conference. So when I listened into the worries or the debates which people were having, a lot of it were actually the debates of the allies of America. And they were debating what could be the implications for the alliance if results go one way or the other. The second, which is in a way peculiarly us, was, we had a very difficult time in our America relationship in the 1960s, definitely 70s, 80s. So what happened was, because our challenges were more with the administration, we actually concentrated on the Congress as a way of engaging the American polity. So over a period of time, and this is an account I've been involved with for 40 years, we actually, the Indian system developed this very bipartisan way of working, of casting its net wide. So the moment anybody actually pops up on the American political scene, immediately what we do is to say, okay, that could be a governor today, could be a first-time member of Congress. You try and reach out. So it's one place where we have actually built a very, I would say, extensive culture of engaging and maintaining relationships. Now, when you take that into today's America, let us say last 10 years or so, for us it's very natural. I mean, I'm not disclosing any great secret that, say, well before the 2016 November results, we had already reached out to the Trump campaign at a high level, and because that's the way it would be. And it wouldn't be, hypothetically tomorrow, let us say we are looking at the 2028 election. If you have, because, presumably you will have different people there. To me, it would be completely in order that if there were 4 or 5 candidates on each side, that we would have in each case, mapped out the candidate, figured out who are the influential advisors. This has become part of our, I would say, our America SOP, because that relationship is very important, and that is the only way you can actually get a grip on that relationship. Well, which is a long way of telling you that we're prepared for whatever happens.
Well, talking about relations with America, or for that matter, the Americas, we've had some concerns, the Indian side with the American and the Canadian side when it comes to issues, also with the Australian side. But the US ambassador from this very stage, Dr. Jaishankar, said, when asked about these concerns about murder for hire charges, so on and so forth, that it has not created a bump in the relationship.
Sorry, what has not created a bump?
These murder for hire charges, or the issues with regards to Gurpatwan Singh Pannoon or Niger, that it has not created a bump. But it certainly is something that they're going to follow through. How is India then really looking at the concerns that it has raised and the concerns that US and Canada now have with India?
No, look, you keep using US and Canada sort of seamlessly. I would draw,
make the divide because we see how you react.
A line there for a variety of reasons. Most notably that all said and done, American politics has not given that kind of space to violent extremist views and activities which Canada has done. So I don't think it's fair to the United States to lump them together. I would distinguish between the two. In terms of how are we dealing with it, well, we're dealing with it this way, that yes, the US has shared with us some information. Some of it is in the public domain, so you are presumably familiar with it. Some of it is not. And our interest is to also look into it because, to us, there seems to be a very strong organized crime aspect to it, which also impinges on our own security. So when we were apprised of this information, we decided to set up a very high-powered committee to look of competent people to look into it, and that is an ongoing issue right now.
Who's
and the
part
Americans
of that committee,
know.
sir?
Sorry?
Who's part of that committee? Because
Competent, high-level people. Sir.
Okay, but can I just add and ask, because again, from this very same stage, US Ambassador Eric Garcetti also spoke about the other concern that now US has raised, and India said do not interfere in India's internal matters. That's the implementation of CAA. And he said that irrespective, we share certain values, we have certain values, you can question our imperfect democracy, and we also will continue to monitor and do so with regards to India. The fact that the cutoff date is 2014 and the people who've already come in are already in. Now, if we are looking at only Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Christians and not Muslims, is it that not discriminatory is what maybe the West is looking at. So how do you look at the Western view or how the West is looking at the implementation of CAA?
Well, look, I'm not questioning the imperfections or otherwise of their democracy or their principles or lack of it. I'm questioning their understanding of our history. Okay? I mean, if you hear the comments from many parts of the world, it is as though the partition of India never happened. You know, and that there were no consequential problems which the CAA is supposed to address. So, if you take a problem, remove all the historical context from it, sanitize it and make it into a political correctness argument and say, oh, I have principles and don't you have principles? I have principles too. And one of my principles is obligation to people who were let down at the time of partition. And I think the Home Minister spoke very eloquently on it yesterday. So the second is, I also have a problem when people don't hold up a mirror to their own policies. You know, so if you say, oh, you are picking some faiths and not some other faiths, okay, I'll give you a few examples of it. You know, have you heard of something called the Vanik-Jackson Amendment, which is about the Jews from Soviet Union? So you would ask yourself, why only Jews? Then there was the Lautenberg Amendment, which was about Christians and Jews, again 1989, Soviet Union. There was the Specter Amendment, which was a few years later, which was about Baha'is. It was about, there was a law which was about a particular ethnicity from Vietnam who were fast-tracked for citizenship because they had fought alongside the Americans. There was fast-tracking of Hungarians after the Hungarian Revolution. There was fast-tracking of the Cubans in the 1960s. So if you were to ask me, have other countries, other democracies fast-tracked on the basis of ethnicity, faith, social attributes? I can give you any number of examples. Now, if I were to also say, you know, after all, why is the situation important? Because very often, when you have something very, very cataclysmic, something really very major, it's not possible to deal with all the consequences right then and there. And I think again yesterday Amit Bhai explained that the leadership of this country had promised to these minorities that if you have a problem, you are welcome to come to India. The leadership didn't thereafter deliver on that promise. Now, it's not just our predicament. You know, if you look in Europe, many European countries fast-tracked the citizenship of people who are left behind in the World War, or in some cases, much before the World War. Some historical issue which was not addressed, but you said, I have a moral obligation to that community. So the world is full of examples. And to me, the context is therefore very important.
We're out of time, but our audiences would be quite upset with me if I didn't end by asking you a question that they've all asked me to ask you, Dr. Jaishankar, which is, we have our own election coming up very soon. And they all want to know, are we going to see candidate Jaishankar fighting the Lok Sabha election?
That is not a question you should ask me, and I suspect it's not a question you're going to ask the next speaker.
Dr. S. Jaishankar, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir.
We've spent a lot of time at the India Today conclave talking about how India is evolving politically and economically. Economic strength also changes the world order, and India's position unquestionably on the global high table has changed in the last 10 years. But what can potentially happen over the next 5, given the global uncertainty and all the other factors at play? How is India's position at the global high table likely to change? What are the tailwinds propelling us? What are the headwinds pushing us back? To talk about that, we're joined at the India Today conclave by 3 super sharp voices in geoeconomics and geopolitics. Allow me to introduce first one of India's preeminent public intellectuals, Dr. Samir Saran, President of the Observer Research Foundation. We've got Borge Brande, President of the World Economic Forum. Thank you very much. Rudra Chaudhary heads Carnegie India. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. So far, Dr. Saran, India's rise over the past 10 years has been largely benign, where we've been able to navigate complicated trapezies, Russia, Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East, continuing our ties with the United States. China remains a big stumbling block, but apart from that, the government has navigated the foreign affairs space smartly. How do you see that change over the next 5 years? Are we likely to see more headwinds trying to push us back, or will the tailwinds, given the current geopolitical order, continue to push us forward? Let's start from there.
So Rahul, I think the last 10 years have not been benign. We have navigated a really complex decade. We have come out largely unscathed by all that has transpired. And it's really been a rocky road. And all credit to the Indian establishment, Indian industry, and Indian people for being able to pull together and pull out of some of the most troubling periods, including the pandemic, the conflicts, both in our neighborhood, Afghanistan, people have forgotten about it, Ukraine, more recently the Middle East. But even prior to that, the shocks that were literally buffeting us since the early 2010s. So it's been a troubling decade, and it's not going to change. What's going to be added to this challenge is going to be how people view India's rise in the days ahead. Till now, people have celebrated an additional place for investments, an additional engine for growth. I think Borge mentioned this morning, 15% of global growth comes from India. So there is a bit of a celebration about having an alternative, about having something extra driving global growth. But at some point, the second word is going to come into place, and that's conformity. Everyone likes additionality. India offers additionality, so they celebrate that. But they also want conformity. Do we conform to what they assess is a free society, a free market, a democracy, a political system? And there you are going to see increasingly India's growth attract greater attention, greater criticism, greater scrutiny, greater pushback.
In what way?
Sorry?
In what way?
You had an ambassador of a country talking about CAA, from a country which is having a problem of migration and immigration
This is Eric Garcetti speaking at the
Eric Garcetti, for example, someone who is probably familiar with the society in Hollywood is now becoming an expert on Indian political establishment. So, for example, you're going to see unnecessary comments of this kind, right? Because it makes news, it gives you visibility, it attracts people to your job and to your responsibility. So you're going to see, I think the foreign minister said it, or someone said it on his panel, you're going to see political sledging, an equivalent of what you see in cricket. You're going to see sledging happen. You're going to see India being, these pinpricks, these small, clumsy statements emanating from, unconcerned and uninformed sources. And you'll have to handle that. That's one part. But the second and more insidious and difficult part is many of these global institutions that are going to be pretty much responsible for, and I think Sanjeev mentioned it in one of his discussions, Sanjeev Sanyal mentioned it in one of his discussions. Many of those who are going to be responsible for rating your credit worthiness or for looking at your ESG scores and multiple other indices, they are going to be influenced by many of these voices as well. So you will have to institutionally prepare for yourself to make a case for India that allows the largest pool of global capital to flow into your geography. It's not going to be easy. Japan is a case in point. South Koreans have gone through this period as well. The Americans have gone through this period. The English didn't give them the keys to the kingdom without resistance. So history will tell you that emergence is not necessarily an easy journey. You will have to battle it out. So we have a good decade ahead of growth, of prosperity, of lifting people out of poverty and meeting aspirations of 1.5 billion people. But we will have to do it with muscles. So we'll have to build our own muscles.
I want to draw Borge Brande into this debate because when we spoke last, you said that this coming time will be the time of the G3. China, the United States and India shaping the global order, and that things are likely to get better for India in the time to come because the world is looking beyond China because of what else is happening internationally. Sameer's argument is that there will be a pushback which creates friction or tensions. The world will not very easily accept India's rise because no country's rise has been accepted easily ever going back in time. Do you buy that this G3 may not fall into place as easily as people sitting in this audience would like, and that there are very serious headwinds India would have to deal with?
I didn't say that, but you paraphrased me in a nice way. Go ahead.
So, I think there is clear correlation between a country's economic success and also influence just in its neighborhood, but also globally. I think this is frequently overlooked. Soviet Union was forever until it was no more, and the reason why the Soviet Union was struggling, at least the last 2 decades, was that economic growth was not happening anymore. Still in the 60s and the 70s, there were some growth. So the reason why India's also geopolitical position, in my view, will be strengthened and will have more leverage in the years to come is to the due fact that India's economy is also growing very, very fast. So it's going to go from a $3 trillion US dollars economy to a 10 trillion one, at least in the coming decade. That will also give India opportunity to invest more in education, research, but also its army and defense. You will see also a stronger India there. And then, to your question, will this raise concerns? Will this also create challenges? I think maybe mainly in its neighborhood, because the fact is that in many of these countries in India's neighborhood, already China and India meet each other in Myanmar, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. So this is already a fact. I think India is currently in a honeymoon phase globally in many ways, especially in Europe and in the US.
But honeymoons don't last long.
So for some marriages, it can even improve and improve. And but of course, the honeymoons are very nice period. But you know, love can grow even stronger every year.
How nice, Rudra. This tension that we're seeing, particularly with Canada, to some extent with the United States, expressed largely in private, sometimes in public. Sameer referred to the comments made by Ambassador Garcetti on the Citizenship Amendment Act. Will the pinpricks increase, or will countries like the United States, a country that you study and analyze closely, continue seeing the larger picture, and even if there is some opposition or resentment, it's voiced more privately and not made a big deal of publicly?
No, thanks, Rahul. Just one point I'll make. If the president of the World Economic Forum turns around and says is that India looks like a honeymoon, despite all the challenges that Sameer has talked about and all the contradictions that, frankly, this leadership has had to deal with in the last decade, I think that's a pretty good outcome, right? because challenges are there. It's definitely not a honeymoon for India. Challenges are there with Europe. As you grow economically, politically, strategically, those challenges will be there even with like-minded states. On the point that you're making, Rahul, look, I think let me just get away from the pinpricks to some of the strategic stuff. Where are we in India today? What are we dealing with, right? One, we have a geopolitical challenge, which is a war in Ukraine, which has pushed us, frankly, to think very seriously about diversification of our strategic resources, reconsider our relations with Russia, turn to countries that have the capability to deliver for us and our interests over the next many decades. Countries like the United States on the one hand, countries like France on the other. My own sense is, down the line is, and, the elections, I think, have been called today. Whichever way, in the sense, it's pretty clear which way India is going to go in the near future. It's not very clear where other countries are going to go in the near future. I think actually there's more opportunity. I think and the reason I see the opportunity is because we've created that space in the last 5 years, which has been very difficult. Not everybody's managed that space, right? So today, for instance, we have a relationship with the United States that covers everything from quantum to AI to defense technologies. There are a lot of people from the private sector here. They're invested in this relationship, I think, in a way in which they weren't even 2 or 3 years ago. That's going to continue. Will you have instability if a new government comes in the US? Sure. But I think by and large, we will have, the line is pretty clear in that sense, at least with the United States.
The most complicated relationship for India is China, Samir. And when it comes to Beijing, over the next 5 years, how do you see the relationship play out? We're currently in a state of confrontation along the border. Our economic ties aren't completely frozen, but clearly are far from the good times of the past. Does this continue at some point in time? Do you think Beijing sees good reason and then starts piping down? Or do you think this is the way it's likely to stay?
Rahul, let me just take a minute to explain my first opening statement. I was talking about sledging. I was not talking about substance. Substantively, we should, in some ways, develop a thick skin and muscles to ignore some of these barbs that will come our way. This is virtue signaling. This is American politics playing out its own selves and expressing them in a manner that implicates us. But this is largely American political system using India as a tool to settle their own unsettled agendas at home. We should rather focus on what is really happening with the US and the strategic community, the foreign policy community, the business community is bet on India. Similarly, that's true for what Borge was saying about the Europeans as well. And I think that's the real story. The real story is that India is moving from 4 trillion to 10 trillion and then 15 trillion over the next decade and a half. And people want to be part of that journey. People want to benefit from it. How can we open more doors? How can we make regulatory predictability offering that we put on the table? How can we remove supply chain irritants and make India the manufacturing hub? So for us, the real task in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, is to continue to receive the interest that we have generated courtesy the previous 10 years. We have to get used to sledging. Now we are playing men's cricket or women's cricket, and we are playing it in a format which is competitive, and we are going to have to deal with folks who will think otherwise, and we have to build the capacity to do that. In many ways, the India-China relationship is a big driver in this global interest in us. The Chinese behavior, not only towards us, but towards everyone, has been the single biggest catalyst to shine the torch on India and the possibility India offers. So more power to Xi Jinping, may he remain forever, and may people continue to see India in the light that they are already doing. So I think China has done a yeoman service in some ways to us, and his behavior has opened doors and windows, and perhaps even made us more aware of the need to look at other partnerships and opportunities beyond Beijing. Otherwise, in the last decade, in the early part of the last decade, you were seeing a huge amount of growth in the trading relationship between India and China.
So does the India-China relationship get worse over the next 5 years in your view, or get better, or stay where it is?
Here is my take. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think the next 5 years are really turbulent. At some stage, maybe when we are close to $6 or $7 trillion and we have $150 to $200 billion, when we have $300 to $400 billion defense budget and security capabilities, we will make it costly for them to be adventurous. At this time, we have the largest asymmetry between the two, and for them, troubling us on the border, pushing us on certain frontiers, creating their large presence in the Indian Ocean is rather easy. We will have to make it costly for them. And I think that starts changing this decade towards the later part of this decade. And I think post that you will see a new, perhaps unwritten agreement between the two to not cross certain red lines. We have to draw those red lines, and we have to make it costly when they breach those red lines. So I think it's going to be a little turbulent, it's going to be worse before it gets better, and it's probably going to be half a decade before we see that.
Brandy, what's your outlook on China's prospects? We're seeing different kinds of prognosis in terms of the economic woes that different sectors of the Chinese economy are facing, but it still is a massive economic reality globally. And what's your sense of where China moves from here and how that impacts India's rise?
So it's always challenging to discuss China in New Delhi. But
tell us what you would, even if you were sitting in Switzerland.
We have to be realpolitical about that. So if you look at China in 1980, China was 0.5% of the global economy. Today, China is around 17 to 20% of the world economy. And it's definitely competing with the US. And we are seeing now a competition between these two large economies that we've never seen before. The US, 25% of the global economy, with 5% of the global population. So US is economically still an exceptional powerhouse. The interesting thing, and I think when we're in India, is to see how has India maneuvered, or how has India come out of this competition that I think we will just see more of in the years to come between the US and China. And as long as it's competition and not decoupling, I think we still will see global economic growth. And that is coming back to my last point in my first intervention, is that India has, in many ways, benefited from this competition, because many countries are now looking at their supply chains, their nearshoring, their friendshoring, and we are seeing more manufacturing coming to India, and many countries, including the US, look at China and India, where they look at India as kind of check and balances in Asia. So checks and balances is something that other nations do look upon as a positive factor, because you don't want to have the winner takes it all. You want to have checks and balances. When India gets stronger, and also economically, and open up its markets, because if it wants to be a manufacturing hub, you also have to import the input factors. You can't produce everything in your own country in that respect, because then you will not really be the manufacturing hub of the world. That opens up also new opportunities for other countries, for foreign direct investments. India will also now need to maneuver very delicately in its security and foreign policy. Currently, a lot of the military equipment in India comes from Russia. And with the unlimited friendship between China and Russia, I guess that the current leadership in India also makes its own reflections based on this. So there is a lot of interesting things to see forward. What we hope for is that even in a polarized, fractured world, we'll find areas where we can collaborate. Because many of the most serious problems do not travel with a passport. They are transboundary. And in these areas, climate change, handling AI, future pandemics, both the G3, India, China, and the US has to collaborate. And they can compete in other areas, but in these areas, I do hope there's possibility to find common
Interesting
solutions.
points there. Rudra Chaudhary, Samir makes the argument that relations with China get worse before they ultimately get better based on India's rise economically and militarily. Borge made the point that India is actually benefiting because of the way that China has been acting. Do things get better? Do they get worse? Do they stay the same?
No, just to respond to what Borge said, look, I think in terms of you look at what is the opportunity and challenge for India in the near future, the opportunity is the changing nature of geopolitics. That's very clear. What does that essentially mean? It means the dislocation of economic production from one major country to others. And there is a lot of support from around the world for that dislocation in itself. Can India absorb a lot of that dislocation? Absolutely. Is that an opportunity for us at the operational level, at the business level? Yes. Are we seeing it happen? Yes. Frankly, what's the big challenge? I would say the challenge for us in terms of geopolitics is, in fact, what the Honorable Prime Minister and a range of other ministers have mentioned, is the rate at which we can actually keep absorbing this, which means factor market change, which means ease of doing business. We're seeing a lot of it happen. We need to see it happen faster to be able to make sure that we're actually arresting these geopolitical opportunities. We see it in semiconductors. We're seeing it in electronic manufacturing. You know, Rahul, 2 years ago, we were told by a lot of people that there's no way that India will have a 28 nano foundry. You'll never get it. Today you have a company from Taiwan investing with a company in India, 28 nano. How did that happen? Some of it was dislocation, some of it was change that was made in India that made this happen in itself. So we look at opportunities. Will it get worse with China before it gets better? On the boundary, anybody's guess. Geopolitically, I think as Samir mentioned, it's not a bad place to be where we are in some sense.
Let's spend a moment on India's most important relationship, which, make no mistake, is the United States, where we've seen bipartisan support to India's growth. Now, some of it is marred by some of the comments that have been made, or for example, what's been happening on the issue of Khalistan and America's perception around that. But there's also a bright chance that Donald Trump may come to power once again in the US. In both those circumstances, if the Democrats were to come back to power, will the stress increase? And what happens, Samir, in your view, between the Indian government, whoever it is that comes to power, and a Donald Trump administration?
Look, I think on that count, we should be actually quite confident that irrespective of who wins the elections in November, India is going to be doing fairly well. And I think the drivers for that are pretty much what we have already discussed in this panel, that there is a new geo-economic framework that is emerging, and India is going to be one of the hubs, one of the central pillars of that new geo-economic framework. We know the political frictions and competition and contests that are underway between the big two currently is going to give us a privileged position. We know that the region we are in is going to contribute, I think there's an IMF report that says 60% of global growth is, or 80% of global growth is from the emerging and developing countries, many of those who are in this neighborhood. So even the growth and economic drivers are related to us pretty intimately. So I think Americans who have understood realpolitik and perhaps have written chapters on it in the last century understand this better than most. And whoever sits in DC is obviously going to have a public-facing domestic conversation and narrative that is going to appease their constituencies. But that aside, in real substantive terms, what the US and India achieved in the last 20 years was unthinkable. If someone was sitting in 2000, India today 2000, would we be talking about US being India's most important partner? It would be really a ludicrous conversation to be having, but it's true, it's happened. The most transformational relationship of this century has been the India-US relationship, and that direction is not going to change. Donald Trump may add tariffs and may seek to bring manufacturing back to America. Donald Trump may think Biden's Inflation Reduction Act is an endorsement of his own earlier determination to protect American industry. All of that aside, in real terms, the India-US relationship is bound to grow both in terms of its economic engagement, its political alignment, and more importantly, its increasingly intimate security arrangements. Do not forget what the US has done in the border confrontation with China over the last 3 years. It is the most underwritten and under-discussed part, but please understand today you have more teeth and more muscles on the borders, courtesy some of the access to technologies, eyes in the sky, and collaboration between the two establishments. The intimacy in defense relationship is going to be what is going to be perhaps really transformational in the next 5 years if Donald Trump comes back, or even if Biden remains. I think it is a material who's sitting in the White House, that White House and India are going to continue to have this special relationship.
So Rudra, there are two theories. One is that behind the scenes, America is indeed putting a lot of pressure, and they're asking India to be a certain way, which conforms to, as Samir says, what is acceptable in the local American context. The other is that there's way too much practicality and pragmatism, and they're going to hold their nose if they don't like something, but just they realize the inevitability of wanting to continue to partner in India's rise. Which of the two do you think is more likely to play out in the next 5 years?
The tension's going to exist. On this particular incident that you talked about, I think in the summer, there'll be newspaper headlines, there will be some case that takes place in New York, etc. There will be some kind of push and pressure in itself. My own sense is pretty clear. Strategically, we're absolutely clear in terms of where we're going with the US. I think the US administration, whichever one it is pretty clear where it's going with India. The operational tension will be left to diplomacy and how you deal with that. But the strategic investments that we're seeing at the moment I think will help balance the scales, at least in the near future. There are just way too many American investments coming this way. You have a US Army today coming to India and saying that, listen, we have to decouple all our military supply chains by 2028. We need to do it here. We need your ammunition factories. When you have that game of leverage, where you're producing what they need, not only for themselves, but also for the world, it changes the tone of the debate altogether.
Look, look at the Ukraine conflict, right? Russia is outproducing the entire EU and American production complex, defense industrial complex. I was in a conversation with some Quad members, and names shall not be taken, and one of their biggest anxieties, and perhaps even their optimistic assessments, was that bring India into play, bring manufacturing at scale into play. If they need to be producing at scale to confront, and Russia is not China. China is multiple times the threat the Russian capabilities pose to them. So they are really thinking about this being the big base that allows the largely similar like-minded countries that constitute the Quad to be able to put together a framework. But just one more thing. But even look at the sledging, as I call it. Right? Look at it. Look at what the American response was to something that happened and the Canadian response was. American response, remove the American media. American media has its own life, lives in La La Land, and let them cater to the readers there. But look at the American state. The American state had conversations behind closed doors. And you had the Canadians going to their parliament and making crazy statements. And that's the difference between a country that is determined to create a strategic relationship with a partner and sees in the partner a future that is conjoint and in many ways coterminous, while the other one is basically seeking votes for the next elections. That's the difference between the American elite.
When you look at India's rise, what worries you the most? What is it that you think is of greatest concern from your perch?
So maybe I'll comment on this situation about US-India relations first,
Sure,
and then I'll come back to that. There is between the US and India, there is not a lot of challenges. It's mainly common interests. The only bipartisan issue in Washington, D.C. is the relationship with China. And India is not relying a lot on export and import from China, contrary to many other nations. There is some, but not as much as Europe, that also, of course, is importing a lot from China, but also exports to China. So Europe is more between a rock and a hard place in that relationship. India also has the advantage for itself that the growth in the years to come will also come a lot from the emerging economies. And as I said to you earlier today, Rahul, already 50% in the coming years of the global growth will come from emerging economies, and after 2040, probably 60%. So India can also build an ecosystem of friends among these emerging economies in Latin America, in Africa, but also in ASEAN, that can benefit India. The strength of the US since the Second World War is not only that they were on top of the Bretton Woods institutions, but they also had a unique ecosystem of friends. And with the US-India relations, we have seen that India has been able to work both with President Trump, but also with the current administration. The challenges for India moving forward is that on the security side, of course, any kind of conflicts and wars will be very negative for growth and investment. So that's why I think there will be also solutions on the border conflicts with China. I don't think that it's any of these two nations' interest to escalate this further. But of course, India relies a lot today, as I mentioned, on Russian military equipment, and I think India also in the coming decade will be a big buyer of US equipment to both hedge, but also make sure that one can then manage the necessary deterrence. Another X factor is the development in Pakistan, and we know that Pakistan is also a nuclear power. I don't think there will be major flare-ups, but of course we can see a further deterioration in this relationship. Hopefully not, but we know the economic situation in Pakistan is not the best. So then, India needs to maneuver its neighboring area, and many of the neighbors are also Muslim countries, and this is something also India, of course, has to factor in its policy.
So the stopwatch tells me time's up, and therefore this is where I wrap up. Borge Brande for coming all the way from the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Thank you very much. Thanks also to Rudra and to Samir Saran for joining us. We were able to cover a fair amount of ground and give you some food for thought on how India's equations with important global players are likely to change, the good and maybe the not so good. So thank you very much. Can we have a warm round of applause for our speakers for this session? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thought processes which are driving us today, I would say they are much more authentic, they are much more deeply rooted in our culture, in our traditions, in our heritage. So that is one part of it. And you know, remember, there's a bigger exercise in the world of cultural rebalancing, that we've seen economic rebalancing particularly through globalization. We have seen political rebalancing. But the third phase of it is really today cultural rebalancing. So there's a bigger conversation there which is going on as well. And India, which is much more conscious of its culture, history and traditions, which, for example, remembers its linkages. You know, I give you a very practical example. The Gulf. You know, the Gulf, our linkages with the Gulf are as old as the monsoon. That people traversed this space because of the winds. And yet, a region which is so close to us, with which we had such deep linkages, somewhere in the quest for modernity, we let go of that connection. The same applied actually to the oceans, that if you look at the islands in the Indian Ocean, or if you look east of India, that you can actually find even today, very significant evidence of major Indian civilizations which were sort of all the way up to the east coast of China. So part of it is also today, once you start thinking of yourself as a civilizational state, you remember your culture, your traditions, you then you revisit, your history. You draw from that, and once you do that, you get a different level of confidence. You have difficult situations where you think of yourself, as I do, that look, I speak really for a polity which has been there for thousands of years. So you take your decisions with both with a certain confidence, but also with a certain deliberation of the consequences of it for years ahead. And then there is a self-reliant side to it, which is, you want to be less vulnerable, you want to be less dependent, you want to be a player, you don't want to be a playing field. So I think it was a combination of all these factors. I felt we had made that transition, especially in the last 5 years. And that's why the title of the second book as opposed to the first.
So can I just ask you a question on your travels and meetings with your peers in different countries, foreign ministers and diplomats and others who engage with you? When they read your book, or when they hear about your book or are briefed about your book, and especially the second one, Why Bharat Matters, have they ever asked you any question about that book? Have they posed any question?
The first question I get is, you're a foreign minister, where do you get the time, or why are you writing a book? Honestly, I think people have started reading the book. I've got a few interested questions, actually not questions. A lot of what I've got is, I didn't know some of these things. So it's more like I plugged a gap in their understanding rather than I presented them with a challenge. But I think next year's Raisina, I could answer that question more honestly.
Okay. So and finally, before we, I'm going to be now beginning the process of your asking questions. So be ready, and you can actually walk up to the mic. There are, I think, two of them, if I can see, 1 and 2. But as you work up on that, my final question to you. You have said, and it was actually...
We have good relations going on with the US, with Iran, with Russia, and seemingly disparate sort of non-allied countries, if I can call them that. So you mentioned about the importance of explaining, communicating in diplomacy. If you can shed some light for us on how India has achieved this, if I can call it almost an impossible trilemma or a unique positioning in the world, and it has been a masterclass in diplomacy. So I think many people in the room would like to learn in a mechanistic manner how India has been able to achieve that.
So basically what he's saying is they will say something at a press conference, but when they're privately sitting with you, they say, I want that too. I want to be able to do that too. I think that's the question Rajiv is asking. Okay, let's move to, I want a mix. So let's move to Alexandra. I want to mix the geographies here. I'm not, like we do in our fellowship, I'm going to mix the geographies. Alexandra.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. My question is on India-Central Asian relations. Today, the 5 Central Asian countries are increasingly operating as a group. So today, in the past 2 years in particular, vis-a-vis major powers and regional entities, as a so-called C5+1 format. And India was among first actors to initiate meeting in this format. So my question is, what importance do you or does Indian foreign policy attribute to Central Asia in this changing global order, in this transforming global order? And do you think that Central Asia can become a middle power and contribute to more global cooperation?
I think there are 3 questions.
Sure. So the first issue, the climate foreign policy. Well, if you look actually at the last decade, it's very interesting that you had India, which was often perceived as the difficult country in the room, come up with ideas and suggestions and innovations and initiatives. So at COP21, we actually started the International Solar Alliance. At the COP26, we were pushing the, what was called the One Sun, One World, One Grid, the idea that you could actually imaginatively take renewables across the world. There were other initiatives like building for disaster resilience, and in fact, before the G20, there was even the message that climate change is not something you should leave necessarily to governments to do, that each one of us can make a difference, and we can make a difference by changing our own lifestyle. So if we actually had a lifestyle which was friendly for environment, that itself would, if you add up 7 billion lifestyles, you would get some concrete result out there. What we have seen in this country, one of course has been a massive expansion of solar energy, and one of the new programs which has been announced this year is actually the rooftop solarization, so that every house in a sense is in an individual manner is adding to to the renewable usage. I would say there's been a kind of a shift in the thinking of people. There's a much greater awareness which is encouraged by the government about taking lifestyle choices, about taking policy choices. You can see an expansion in public transport, mass transport, for example. Now, having said all that, the reality is also that it's very difficult to make very dramatic transformations, because transformations also have their own, they have their own complications. If you take, for example, coal, there would be many countries in the world who would still, for livelihood in terms of resources that they have, for them coal is the one which is most readily available. So a lot of the answers in coal is just like you transition on other forms of fossil fuel, is also whether you can lighten the burden of coal, for example, through coal gasification. But there would be, the transition out of fossil fuel, oil to gas, that's, also a challenge. But we need to look today at the new dependencies that, renewables are creating, that we are all solarizing madly. Now, where are those panels coming out of? Where's the battery storage technology? So, are we actually in a geopolitical way, a geo-economic way, are we actually creating new vulnerabilities for ourselves? I think that's really a question also that needs to be addressed. So it is a complex debate, but I definitely would say when I see let us say starting from Kyoto to Dubai, the journey which COP has made, I would certainly say that this country and this country's policy has evolved very much in a direction which is sensitive to climate change.
Her question was India-EU partnership there.
Yeah, on India-EU partnership, in fact, we have a practical partnership with, we have a partnership with individual countries. We have a partnership with EU as a whole. One example which comes to my mind is really the collaboration we had with Germany to create the grids which were necessary for the solarification to increase very rapidly. But even in terms of technology, we are very much in conversation with the EU on, how we can both really be much more self-reliant when it comes to renewable technologies. On the second issue, this positioning, how do you handle contradictory accounts? Look, the first thing, to be honest, is not to be too clever. I don't go to one place and say something and go to another place and say something completely different. Because at the end of the day, people talk to each other. People know at every place, they have a sense of what's been the conversation. So I think actually leveling with people, putting out a point of view, being helpful at times. Sometimes I go to a place, some examples were mentioned by the questioner. So, you go to, say, Tehran, and you hear very bitter complaints about some other countries. Now, I think at times serving as a communication helps. At times telling countries, look, you really need to hear this. Now, if you level with countries, you can actually, it's a bit like my talking to you. If I'm your friend, I can put my arm around your shoulder and say, look, I'm your friend and you really need to hear this from me. And you can say some very difficult things. Once you get the impression that you don't have an axe to grind, you're not being clever, you're not playing one off against the other, your idea, your objective is broadly a kind of a global good objective. That gives you a lot of cachet in this business. So I would say, sometimes people say, oh, you're a diplomat, why are you so blunt? Or why are you straightforward? Believe me, that's the best form of diplomacy. Because when you are straightforward and they think you are straightforward, then people take what you say seriously and sincerely. They don't think you mean ill, they don't think you're putting them down. They take it for what it really is. So
has any diplomat who may have made a statement in a public forum which would have been criticizing you, has they come back in a back room, told you, actually, I understand you, I get you?
Well, not to...
You can also name them if you want, but this is...
No. Look, I've actually had people who've said, that, I give you an example, Chancellor Schulz, who actually has said that, I heard the Indian Foreign Minister say something and maybe we need to reflect on it, that there's something to what
and he said that in a public forum.
So I've not had a case where people have said something in public and come back and said something else. They've either been equally nasty or equally nice.
Okay.
So, and on the Central Asia, I spoke about the historical linkages. Look, this was a civilizational space whose influence was vast, whose influence really extended in a way from Japan to Europe, across the seas all the way to the north. And modern history, for a variety of reasons, treated us unkindly, and a lot of the responsibility is our own. So today, if we understand our history, understand the civilizational linkages, I look in each direction. I spoke to you about the Gulf, I look at the Indian, the oceans below, or Southeast Asia, but I equally look at Central Asia. That so much of Central Asia, throughout history, has been linked in multiple ways to us. And even today, those linkages, let me say, they don't go away. There's a kind of, at a societal level, there is still a resonance, there is a natural empathy. People pick up on it very quickly, you understand each other. So what we did 2 years ago was to start the C5+1. And we have Today, these are all countries with whom we've always been very comfortable. But being comfortable and having a deep relationship are not the same thing. So we are, in different areas today, depending on the country. We are looking to deepen ties. A lot of it is in education, some of it is infrastructure, it's health. Health is a very big issue out there. It's energy. But it's also politics, it is strategy, it is security.
Okay. So the next three are Prasanna. I'll take your question. I'll take Rufus. You can come in too. And Hallelujah. And Hallelujah is actually a name. I'm not making it up. So let's start with you, Prasanna.
Thank you. So there's anecdotal evidence and also a strong case from an operational efficiency and even military effectiveness standpoints to go for unified theatre commands so far as the Indian armed forces are concerned. The Kargil Review Committee talks about it, the Shekarkar Report Committee talks about it. However, the progress that India has made in this regard has been abysmally slow, and given the growing interlinkages between a strong armed forces and geopolitics, given the rise of China, what is your view and also an honest assessment of India's trajectory towards a unified theatre commands? And also...
No, only one question. That's it. We have many more to cater.
Are you a military guy?
No, he used to serve under Mohan Parekarji in his office. So okay. he has.
So answer is kind of.
Kind of. I mean, not military, but yeah, nearly there. But his persistence was like that in wanting a second one as well. Okay, Rufus, let me get on to you.
Many thanks. Just a very quick question. The new kid on the block in terms of foreign policy is the feminist foreign policy, muted first by Sweden and then the rest of us caught up. So I'd just be very interested to hear your thoughts on, from an Indian perspective, what the feminist foreign policy means for India, because for us within the Africa context, many countries are really struggling with that. Thanks.
In the African context, you are struggling with this concept. Okay, sir. So feminist foreign policy. Okay, Hallelujah. Third.
Thank you. My question is regarding the nuclear weapons. The past few years witnessed significant rise and escalation in the conception and use of nuclear weapons, and we've been hearing, for example, the possibility of tactical use of nuclear weapons by Russia. And in the past few weeks, we also witnessed, the U.S. accusing Russia of aspiring to have nuclear weapons in the space, and we also read that Iran has weapon-grade uranium that could result in significant escalation.
Question, short and sharp. Question.
So that was the context, and as a foreign minister of a nuclear power, and as a scholar who did his PhD on nuclear diplomacy, how worried are you about the possibility of a nuclear confrontation of the use of nuclear weapons in one way or another? Thank you.
Okay, can we take one more this turn? Okay, let me turn to Henry.
Hi. So we've heard of pretty much talks.
Come close to the mic and either lift the mic so that it can reach you or bend down and reach the mic.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Right, so we've heard throughout the rise, that the rise of India, and that it would require more seats, more responsibility for India in the global arena. We hear all about the Permanent Security Council. Yet during your rotational turn in Security Council a couple of years ago, there were quite a few vetoes. Now, that being said, what kind of a global actor would India be if it gets more seats and responsibility? And wouldn't that have a fundamental change on India's foreign policy and its nature if it would end the hedging position and sort of balancing between great powers if you'd have to take a stronger stand on issues?
Okay. Are we going to take a stand? Are we going to hedge? That's the question. Okay. And so I think you mentioned something like that in the morning of how you portray a choice. Anyways.
So let's start with the unified theatre commands. I've largely observed the armed forces with a lot of interest and some responsibility from outside. I had the privilege of working with them directly in one part of my career. And I would say it's much easier to in a sense, analyze why a theatre command should come about. And today, the merits of that are accepted. It's a very different task to actually make it happen. And this is not unique to India. I mean, if you look at other countries who have been through that process, the US is a very well-known example, you know, the Goldwater-Nichols Act. But the whole debate which preceded and succeeded that, China has been through that experience. So I don't, some of the characterizations, the impatience of the analyst doesn't take into account the complications of the forces concerned. It's a much harder thing to do. There are many departures from the way we work. There are different assignations of responsibilities which come with it. So in many ways you conceptualize, let me tell you, when you look at the world through theater commands, the world itself looks to you very differently than it does when you have, in a sense, three forces and each service has its own command. So I would, I understand your sentiments and your enthusiasm for this. As I said, as a fundamental concept today that is accepted in this country, but I think you need to bear with all the the wrinkles and the second, third order effects of such a change being implemented. The feminist foreign policy, that's kind of interesting to me, because in my, one of our objectives in the G20 was to push for women-led development. And to my surprise, I found it a bit of a tough sell. It didn't get as readily embraced as I thought it would. But in different ways, I see it featuring, in our foreign policy. We actually, when it came to climate change, the first question, we found that you could propagate a message and even build capabilities much more effectively if your resource people were women. So we had this very successful program called Solar Mamas, and these are people who, particularly in the Pacific Islands, but in other places as well, have been individually trained and incentivized to look after solar facilities. When it comes to development projects, today India has development projects in roughly 80 countries across the world, 78 to be precise, more than 600 big projects. A lot of these actually have a significant gender sensitivity which is built into it. So one part of it, therefore, is actually your policy. What are your goals? What are you looking to do? But the other part of it is example. So when we ourselves today legislate that 1/3 of your members of parliament or members of legislature will be women, if we have policies which are designed to address gender gaps of various kinds in education, in health, I think that too.
And you also had a statistic last year, I'm forgetting the numbers, but the number of women diplomats today in the newer batches you had mentioned.
So I was going to kind of conclude with that. So one part of it is your vision, your goals, your mission in a way. One part of it is how do you implement that? And we certainly have seen in the Indian Foreign Service a very significant rise in the number of women, and we welcome that in many ways, because I think it gives us a much broader perspective of how particularly to look at our interaction with the world. If I were to move to something completely different, which is the nuclear weapon question, look, the tactical use is not a new debate. There was a big debate in the 60s and 70s about the viability of the use of tactical weapons and the fire break and what it would mean, the escalatory ladder. And I think a lot of the arguments which were historical remain relevant. The nuclearization of space, that's a different ballgame. And I know that today it's part of the contemporary debate. So would I be worried about the direction of what is happening in that space? I would be, look, I am concerned today. Who would not be concerned if there were new conflicts and conflicts going in directions which we did not anticipate. So, it could be Ukraine, it could be Gaza, it could be something else. So, the fact that you have, as we advance, as technology also matures, the same conflict today becomes much more potent, it becomes much more, in a way, difficult to game, to predict than it was before. So certainly, it would be a very, very sanguine person who would say, I have no worries. But I would balance it with the remark that, much of these debates are not new debates. On the question on the, the rise of India, what did we were in the Security Council, so what did we do? Do we hedge? Do we balance? So there's a little bit of a definitional problem here. The problem is this. It's like I decide something, you decide something, and everybody else out here is told, choose sides or you're hedging. Okay. Now, maybe what looks as a hedge to you is actually my side. I have an equal right to define a side, to put forward my views. It's not like there are higher authorities out there who will define which sides we have and there's a binary option, and anybody who doesn't exercise a binary option is a weak link. I don't think that's a fair description of the world. I think different countries have different interests, and I don't think there are two sides to any question anymore. There are many sides to many questions. And if there are many sides to many questions, I don't think everything is a hedge. When we use the word multipolar world on the one side, and then we say hedging, balancing, swing state. The guys who are accused of being hedging, balancers, swing states, actually will now end up as poles. So they own a side, they own a position, and they're going to have interests of their own. So they're not going to, be gamed by others who say, I will define the parameters, and this is the space, and this is the decision we want you to take. So the game's changing, and the game's not going to be defined.
I think now, next time, there should be 3 options in the UN votes. I, no, and rubbish. We should be able to say these are rubbish. And I think it's fair to say that, because sometimes the options given are rubbish. I think that's a good third option, sir. Our friend Michael gave you an idea for rank, the composition. I'm giving you the idea for a voting system.
There must be an Australian word for rubbish.
Let me bring the last set of questions. I can only take 3 more because we are running out of time. And I had promised the minister I'm going to leave him by 9:50. So 3 more questions, short ones. I don't want context and I don't want speeches. I want just questions. And Lauren, I'm looking at you and saying this. Short, sharp question.
So I'm Lauren. Okay. I want to ask you...
Don't open the phone, from the heart. I want short question.
Yeah. I want to ask you, after the elections this year, what India will focus in the international system, and how you consider it as a success? Thank you.
Okay, now let me bring Caitlin in front. I want the new batch to come in. I haven't heard my new ones. So please. I didn't hear the second. Sorry, after the elections, what was the second part? Define success.
Okay.
Okay. Caitlin.
Hello, I'm Caitlin. I'm from Australia, and I'm part of
Since you mentioned an Australian, I wanted one.
I'm part of the Raisina Young Fellows program. I would like to know, you mentioned recently that the multiple personalities of a Hindu god equated to the relationship of the Quad plus France. You said when they meet, suddenly everything starts to work. I would like to hear you speak a little bit more about that, unpack it, and then talk about what priorities you see for the Quad Summit this year.
That's a very long question, but maybe a few priorities only, sir. Okay, let's go with my friend, Mohammed.
Okay, I would like to start by saying thank you.
No context, question.
Thank you for organizing Raisina and inviting us. Thank you. Okay, so my question is about BRICS. Last year, there was an expansion of BRICS that included some countries, including Egypt, sure. My country. So what were the standards of choosing the new countries? What is the BRICS trying to achieve? And should the BRICS have a secretary?
Where are you from?
Egypt. He's a diplomat from Egypt.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's a good question. What were the standards and what were the criteria, right?
Yes. So,
we got
the standards? What are you trying to achieve?
We got it. We got the question. Great question. Okay.
Next.
You know, I am tempted to give it to Christoph. So, Christoph, you've been standing there patiently. Go ahead with your question, but don't make it predictable because I know what you're going to ask. Now try to surprise me.
Yeah, I try. I would like to congratulate on the term cultural rebalancing and observation. Thank you. And this is my question goes out to the maybe surprising way. Every great power, every rising power since Germany in the 30s to let's say China in the early 2000s basically made itself prominent by the means of sports and games and Olympic Games. Do you think sports would be part of India's also role and presence in the world?
Yeah. So is that the end or can I take one more?
You can take one more.
Okay, Rian.
Thank you, Samir. I'll keep this.
You know, you had that look on your face that compelled me to give it to you.
So my question is regarding the Indian diaspora that you will find in all corners of the world. They've achieved a huge amount of success in multiple fields recently as political leaders. So I'd like to ask, how do you see the Indian diaspora and people of Indian origin contributing to your vision of Bharat?
Say that to me.
The Indian diaspora and the vision of Bharat, right? Have you engaged with them on the vision of Bharat, the Indian diaspora?
No. I still will finish this. And
okay. Go ahead.
No, we can stop here.
You'll take one more round?
One last.
Okay, good. Okay, then we are going to do one more round.
So, I think the first question was, after the elections, what would you define as success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, thank you that you are figuring out what the direction of the elections are going to be. That's very, very perceptive and wise of you. And what would I see as success? Now, so look, the last 10 years, I think in many ways, we have contributed more, we have been more visible, we have tried to shape things more, we have taken more responsibility, and I think every one of those aspects, and I can give you examples for each one of them, each one, they would grow. But sometimes it's good to put things in some kind of number. And the fact is that today we are a shade below $4 trillion. We would be almost double that by the time we finish the next term.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look in terms of resource, and what this, people use this GDP number as a marker, okay? It carries a lot of implications. It means your trade will become bigger, it means your investments would be more, it means your influence would be greater, your overall weight goes up in this system. So I would say in many ways that the by the time we reach the end of the decade, it's very clear we would be the third largest economy. But more than that, some of the big changes which are taking place in the world, and to me, as I said, re-globalization, resilient supply chains, the idea of a global workplace where there's mobility, where new businesses, the chips, the semiconductors, the batteries, the electric mobility, the renewables, all of these would require a very different kind of international economy. And it's there that, we can bring our human resources really into play. And to me, when I, conceptualize the world ahead, these are to me the new factors of change, and that's something I have written about in the book as well. On the Quad, the analogy, analogies are meant to be useful, not always literal. But the idea was that, I find it, as someone who's been, with the Quad all through, including the first attempt, I find Quad actually very comfortable to work with. My Quad colleagues. There's a lot that we share in our way of work. Bear in mind, culturally we are very different, but we are all deeply democratic societies, market economies, pluralistic in many ways, able to argue out positions, put things in a very direct fashion to each other. So there is a certain comfort which has actually enabled Quad to ramp up very, very significantly in a very short space of time. When I look ahead, I do see it as one of the principal mechanisms of consultation and policy making in respect to the Indo-Pacific. On BRICS and the standards criteria, yes, there were standards and criteria. These were discussed in great detail. For various reasons, it was not made public. But obviously the standards were good, which is why we have Egypt. There were certain specific issues which were considered while taking the decision, but there was a broad alignment. Do these countries align with the nature of BRICS, with the positioning of BRICS, the sort of thinking of BRICS? And I think that was the overall overarching criteria, thinking which really guided the selection of members, along with some kind of geographical regional balance. On cultural rebalancing, I do think that is a big debate of our times, which is in a globalized world, this attempt to define who's politically correct, who is not, who will give judgment on whom, who will rate whom, who will, make those decisions. To me, that's an extrapolation of the competition. That the clever guys get in, the smartest way of playing a game is to become the judge. Then you get to decide how the players have done. Now, I think there's going to be a tussle how this works. My sense is, if the economic diversity and the political diversity of the world have asserted themselves, I can't imagine that the cultural diversity will not do that. So I see that as something is coming. Sports. Look, countries like sports for two reasons. They are a reflection of competitiveness. They also are a matter of pride. I think both are reasonable. And it doesn't have to be the two countries you mentioned. I cannot. Every country today at any game. It could be soccer. If a country wins a soccer final, Argentina saw it as a matter of enormous pride. So it's, to me, taking pride and preparing yourself for sports and honing those skills is a very natural part of human competitiveness. In this country, we also see that as very important to national fitness. So a lot of what we do, we have 2-3 big movements in this country. We have something called like Play India. I mean, that's a literal translation or
Khelo India.
Khelo India, or, a kind of a fitness. So we want people to be fit. I mean, it's part, frankly, of a public health policy. It keeps a country psychologically, sharp, if you encourage that. And certainly, a lot of us in public life, we try today through personal example to exhort people to to take part in sports, to stay fit, to do things. So I'm very much a votary of that kind of thinking. Last question, Indian diaspora and Bharat. I have, yes, there have been occasions I've had conversations, but I've felt from the interactions I've had that the book resonates, the argument, the concept resonates very much with the diaspora, as it does, in fact, with large sections of Indian society.
Okay, I'm going to, unfortunately, I'm now going to use my veto as the moderator and limit this to 4 names. Last 4 names, short questions, no context, and I've already accepted all your thank yous, so no thank yous. Okay, so last 4 names, let me just pick them up. Sonam, you have been standing there, so I'll come to Sonam. I want to come to the brave Charlotte. She's not well, but she's still standing in the line, so I want to come to you and Carla. So you, Carla, and Sonam are the first 3, and maybe just because of persistence, I'll give it to Robert. So let's go, Sonam. Let's start with you.
Good evening, Your Excellency. I'm Sonam from Bhutan, alumni of Business Summer School of Global Governance 2017. While India is navigating the turbulent world we live in with admirable clarity of purpose, how does she plan to accommodate the concerns of Bhutan, which is caught between the 2 giants, both of which are ancient civilizational states? Given Bhutan's dependency on India for most of its needs and surplus in favor of India, how can India assure Bhutan that the concerns of countries like Bhutan and other smaller states matter, and how can competition be healthy between 2 powerful neighbors instead of the kind we have seen in Maldives? Thank you.
Charlotte?
Hello.
You can bring the mic down.
It's okay. I'll just go on my toes. So there's currently an Indian delegation in London looking to finalise the FTA with the UK. We've talked a lot about the EU and the relationship with India, but with the signing of the FTA, what will relations look like now, modern relations between the UK and India, which go back so many years? Thank you.
What would the relationships look like if you signed the FTA with UK? That's a question. And we'll come to Carla and then Robert. Robert, maybe you can come in. That's good.
Hi, thank you. You've spoken about India as a civilizational power. What's your message to allies and partners who worry about the more extremist aspects of Hindutva pride? And is there a point at which these domestic issues would start to impact India's international standing? Should you do more to reassure allies and partners in the world about that?
And finally, Carla.
Thank you.
Robert, you can also, where are you from? US. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask, there's been a lot of talk in the last few days about what a potential second...
Can you come closer to the mic?
Yes.
We can't hear you.
There's been a lot of talk about what another Trump presidency would mean for Europe. I would like to ask you, what do you think it would mean for India, also with a view to America's China policy? Thank you.
Okay. I think those 4 should be fine. Thank you. And I'm sorry we won't be able to take more. So apologies to the others.
Let me start with the Bhutan question. Look, India has a number of neighbors, barring one, in size at least, they're all very much smaller, and in population too, in economy as well. And the neighborhood first approach is really to be generous, to be non-reciprocal, to be sensitive to a lot of these neighbors. Now, neighbors will, at the end of the day, like any sovereign country, make choices and take policy decisions which suit their interests. So, in the case of Bhutan, I think for many decades, the government of Bhutan has found that its interests are best served by having a stronger, very strong relationship with India. And that has been borne out on the ground by a number of developments. Bhutan, for example, a large part of its economy is to generate electricity, and the revenues itself start to India. The revenues are obviously very helpful to Bhutan. They get a lot of tourists from India. A lot of the logistics of Bhutan go through India. So, and this is not just Bhutan. I could in different ways make the case for some of the other neighbors as well. So, I haven't, far from my seeing anything which is moving in a contrary direction, I actually see Bhutan and India doubling down on that partnership. Where if you today look in terms of the literally the investments, the financial investments in the partnership, the scale of the relationship, it's far greater than it has ever been before. Today, I've actually just had a meeting with the new Bhutanese foreign minister, and the messaging from that meeting again is very, very robust. So I'm very confident, because look, at the end of the day, how do neighbors judge you? They judge you by the routine. Okay, every day, how does the daily rub work? Is trade good? Is movement of people good? Is there tourism happening there? Are we doing enough business with each other? That's one part of it. Is our security better off? The other part of it is what happens when things go wrong. Now, this part of the world saw what happened during the COVID. Every one of our neighbors, again, barring two, got their first vaccines from India. When actually there was a fuel crisis, when there is a food crisis, when they, when for whatever reason they have a particular need, we are in many ways the natural neighbor that they turn to, understandably. Perhaps nothing could be more graphic than what happened in the case of Sri Lanka. That Sri Lanka hit, what was the perfect storm. And at that time, frankly, the rest of the world, stood there with their hands in the pocket and watched Sri Lanka go through that storm. And it actually took a neighbor like India. And we, at that time, made what was for us an unprecedented decision of putting out a package of $4.5 billion for Sri Lanka. So, finally, good days, bad days, rainy days, sunny days, neighbors finally know who are the good neighbors. And I think I have every confidence that is the case with Bhutan as well. On what would life be like if we did the UK FTA, I would say the FTA is done, if there is a balanced mutual, they get the terms right, which they would, because, they won't do an FTA if they didn't get the terms right. I suspect, both countries will stand enormously to benefit, because today, how do different economic production and consumption centers deal with each other is actually a very major point, and to the extent we can facilitate it, and certainly FTA is one way of facilitating it, connectivity is another way of facilitating it, digital flows is a third way of facilitating it. So the reason why we are engaged in this exercise is precisely because both of us see a lot coming out positively from that FTA. On the civilizational power, look, again, is India a civilizational power? Absolutely. It is a civilizational power because it has been around for thousands of years, and there is a certain, I would say, a certain gravitas and a certain mindset which comes from having a long history and approaching the world with a very considered, deliberate, responsible, mature way. Now, the question, are there people in any country, including India, who others would regard as extremists? I think it depends on your point of view. Some of it may be true, some of it may be politics. What also happens is you can have countries who would judge you by their own political standards. There are countries which have vote banks who think therefore the rest of the world should also have vote banks. As I said, this whole ratings business.
No, actually, now I remember, I was saying we heard something like this in the morning. That's why I asked him. Because I remember saying in the panel that I was moderating, that in geopolitics there is sledging. And this is amounting to sledging. If you don't like something, you would possibly use this as a way of, unsettling you. So I'm sure some of your travels would have seen some of this sledging. Well, geopolitical sledging.
There's I don't know how many of you do follow cricket. There are two ways of doing with sledging. One is to sledge back, the other is to hit a six. So you take your choice. Okay. But the fact is, look, we are a very open, pluralistic society. We are frankly far more plural than any other country I can think of in the world. Now, I'm quite prepared to have debates with people, but then all debates have to be, a two-way flow. That if people have views, they must be prepared to listen to what you have to say on those views. And my sense is today, this attempt really to impose your politics on the other person is very much a driver of these kinds of comments. There could be, the political people may have others, but I think here that may not be the case. Finally, the issue on Trump. President Trump was president from 2017 to 2021. We had a very good relationship with him. He came here on a visit. My Prime Minister went there on some visits. There were, like any relationships, there were issues, but overall, if I look in those 4 years, did our relationship deepen? Did it grow? Absolutely, it did. So, I'm not, it's not just, President Trump. I think if you look at India-US, from perhaps Clinton, with every presidency, the relationship has actually deepened. Now, you could attribute it to structural advantages. You could attribute it to clever diplomacy. I'm modest about it, but the fact is, it has grown, and I have every confidence that it will continue to do so.
Actually, if countries could come out unscathed, both under the Obama presidency and the Trump presidency, and were able to do well during the last 3 years as well, that would be deft diplomacy. So I think Indian diplomacy deserves a round of applause, and the Indian Foreign Minister deserves a round of applause as well for having done well in the last years. So as we close, on behalf of this group, I thought it would be proper if we give you a book to each one of them. And we have distributed that. Some of them sneaked in and got signatures done. I don't know if it would be possible, but at least for the 60 of the current young batch, if it would be possible to send you back those 60 books and find some time for you to sneak a signature in over the next few days, then at least the current batch could go back with your sign. And I know 200 is a big number to ask you to sign. Done. So thanks a lot for doing that, sir. And please join me in thanking Dr. Jaishankar for his time and his intervention. this session is essentially a conversation between 5 very smart people. I actually would take a step ahead and say it's between 5 think tankers. Dr. Jaishankar is not a foreign minister, he's actually a think tanker. And he's pretending to be a foreign minister. So I am now going to ask him to manifest his think tank hat here and get into a conversation with his colleagues on questions of world affairs. And I think there's lots to talk about in the world today. And the good news for all of you is that I will only ask one question through the entire morning. The rest of the questions are going to be amongst themselves. And I'm going to kick this off by actually posing a question to the foreign minister. Foreign minister, you are someone who's made foreign policy more relatable to people. You have used grammar, vocabulary, and even imagery that makes people, young people especially, become more interested in some very complex and complicated discussions that are underway. People feel involved in foreign policy today. Most recently, a book, Why Bharat Matters, has dived deep into some of our oldest stories as children growing up in this country to make complex contemporary questions more interesting for them. But for a foreign policy audience, what are the big takeaways from your book, from your recent book? What are your 4 or 5 big takeaways for the world we live in today?
Okay. Clearly, you're taking the think tank bit seriously. So, what are the takeaways? One, I think the really serious problems are stemming from the economic vulnerabilities of the world. My case is for re-globalization, where supply chains, where concentrations, where digital vulnerabilities are better addressed. And I push that because we are really focused much more on the obvious challenges, the war in Ukraine, the what's happening in Gaza, the COVID. So my point is the economic fragilities, the economic dependencies are actually the really serious threat to the world. The second point would be that in a way, the beware of the normal. We tend to focus on the exceptional situations, but actually there's a daily, erosion or a daily danger or a daily insecurity created by the normal. So watch where the normal is going, because every day in our lives we are doing things which expose us more and more, particularly in a technology-dependent world. The third relates to the mind games. So, competition has many forms, but one of them are the mind games which accompany. It's like any competitive activity. So, all these indexes which you get, ratings, how democratic are you, how good's your press, how good's your civil rights. So this is like the equivalent of sledging in cricket. It's meant to psych you before you get ready for doing anything. So I'm saying that particularly looking at Michael.
No, but in the political sphere, the Americans are the biggest sledgers, not the Australians.
Well, that we can discuss on a cricket aside.
Okay.
And the fourth, which is part of the reason for the title of the book, is we in India need to think